Chapter 3473, Chapter 3473, Little Crab. Chapter 3473, Little Crab. Only Jun Linyuan would dare tell the imperial physician and a young lord to scram. However, when the two of them heard this, they really left as they were told. Feng Wu was furious. She yelled at Feng Sun and Master Chu. "Are you leaving just because he told you to leave? Don't you have any dignity? You're not allowed to leave." However, Master Chu and Feng Sun looked at each other before they ran off without hesitation. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. The crown prince stared at Feng Wu with a cold look in his eyes. Feng Wu panicked under his gaze. Instinctively, she tried to shake off Jun Linyuan's grip, but the more she resisted, the tighter Jun Linyuan's grip was. "It hurts!" Feng Wu cried out in pain when she felt like her wrist was about to be crushed. Jun Linyuan frowned, but he still let go in the end. Feng Wu wanted to run away like a rabbit as soon as he released her. However, before she could take more than 2 steps, Jun Linyuan grabbed the back of her collar and pressed her against the pillar. The next thing she knew, the crown prince had already placed his hands on both sides of her head and was staring at her with angry eyes. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Feng Wu panicked when she saw the look in his eyes. "Did you want to run away?" His voice was low, and it was obvious that he was very angry. Feng Wu said, "I'm going home." The crown prince loomed over her, and a mocking look appeared on his nanasum race. "Did one say you can leave her?" Feng Wu said, What do you mean? I want to go home. Do I need your permission?" For some reason, Feng Wu felt guilty in front of Jun Linyuan. It was as if she had been his maid in some previous life. She really couldn't face him. There was no response for a long time. She looked up and saw his unbelievably handsome face. The two of them were very close, only centimeters away. He moved closer and closer. His exquisite features were unbelievably attractive up close. He stared at her and smirked as if to say, "Why are you even asking?" Feng Wu didn't know what to say. "I want to go home." Frustrated, Feng Wu bared her fangs and brandished her claws like a little beast. Jun Linyuan stared at her coldly. Feng Wu was even angrier. "I want to go home." After that, Feng Wu bumped her head against Jun Linyuan's chin. There was a loud bang. Jun Linyuan was stunned. Feng Wu was stunned. However, the next moment her face scrunched up in pain. Was Jun Linyuan's chin made of iron? It was so hard. He looked at Feng Wu as if she were a retard. Seeing the miserable look on Feng Wu's face, he found her adorable. He wanted to rub the little beast's head. However, he didn't follow his heart. He pulled Feng Wu closer and raised her chin with one hand. The red mark on the girl's fair forehead was obvious. Feng Wu struggled. Jun Linyuan glanced at her and frowned. "Stop waving your hands. Are you a crab?" Feng Wu was astonished. She also realized that her actions were very childish. She stopped struggling and glared at him angrily. Rubbing her forehead with his fair fingers, the teenager sighed and stared at Feng Wu in resignation. "Is your head made of iron? Why did you hit me with your head?" Chapter 3474. Chapter 3474. Pride in a Relationship. Chapter 3474. Pride in a Relationship. Feng Wu was frustrated. "Is your chin made of steel? Why didn't you feel a thing?" Looking at the frustrated girl, the crown prince's anger dissipated. He rubbed Feng Wu's head. Feng Wu moved away unhappily. "I'm going home." With a swoosh, she really dashed off. Feng Wu couldn't believe it. Did Jun Linyuan really just let her leave? She involuntarily turned around and met Jun Linyuan's eyes. He looked at her with a cold gaze. It was obvious that he was unhappy. Feng Wu didn't dare look him in the eye. Feng Wu waved at him. "I've been busy since I got back from Nest. I haven't had time to go home yet, so I'm leaving, okay?" She looked back at Jun Linyuan when she jumped onto the wall. Anyone who tried to jump over Jun Linyuan's wall would die. However, Feng Wu could jump whenever she wanted. If it wasn't for Jun Linyuan's special permission, she would have been torn to pieces. After all, there were more than 3 spiritual overlords in the crown prince's residence. Feng Wu saw that Jun Linyuan was still standing there. Although he didn't look well, and his eyes were dark. He didn't come to catch her. She ran away like a cat, and soon disappeared from Jun Linyuan's sight. Jun Linyuan didn't say a word. Someone nearby snickered. Jun Linyuan gave him a sharp look. It was indeed Feng Sun. He cleared his throat, walked out from behind a pillar outside the door, and moved closer to Jun Linyuan, trying not to laugh. Boss Jun, don't be mad at me. I'm not the one who made you angry. Jun Linyuan gave him an intimidating look and walked out. Feng Sun hurried after her. I see. So, that's what's going on between you two. Feng Sun looked like he finally knew what was going on. The crown prince, who was walking silently in front of him, paused for a moment but didn't say anything. Feng Sun noticed that Boss Jun was listening intently. He said, Boss Jun, you won't be able to get a wife for the rest of your life if you keep doing this. Hey, don't glare at me. Am I wrong? I have nothing to do with her, Jun Linyuan said glumly. Really? Resting his hands on his hips, Feng Sun teased him. Boss Jun, no one believes that. All right, if you have nothing to do with her, then this conversation is useless. Even His Royal Highness, who had always been elegant and graceful, had times when he choked on his words. Resting his hands on his hips, Feng Sun gloated and said to himself, My sister has a lot of suitors waiting for her. They're all waiting in line outside the imperial capital. Let me tell you. The imperious crown prince glared at him. Do you want to die? Feng Sun felt a chill run down his spine. Speak. Feng Sun was dumbfounded. What? He was so frightened that his mind went blank. How could he know what to say? Staring at him, Jun Linyuan crossed his arms and said nothing. What? Right. Feng Sun finally understood what Boss Jun meant. He didn't sound like he was asking for advice. Of course, Feng Sun only dared to criticize Boss Jun in his head. Just like Feng Wu, he wasn't bold enough to say anything out loud. Feng Sun then began to tell Jun Linyuan how to woo his sister. The way you are right now won't do. Both of you have high self-esteem. Why are you still so arrogant and aloof? One has no pride when one is in a relationship. Chapter 3475. Chapter 3475, Brother-in-Law. Chapter 3475, Brother-in-Law. The way you are right now won't do. Both of you have strong self-esteem. Why are you still so arrogant and aloof? One has no pride when one is in a relationship. Yes, I know you're strong. And so is little Feng Wu. One of you has the divine phoenix blood, and the other has the dragon phoenix blood. You're both the proudest people in the world. You can't be any more arrogant. But in a relationship, there's always someone who gives in first. Boss Jun, do you think little Feng Wu will give in? Jun Linyuan frowned and gave it some thought. Based on what he knew about Feng Wu, she was only obedient on the surface, but never on the inside. Feng Sun said, Then who likes the other more? Jun Linyuan glared at Feng Sun. What kind of question was that? Feng Sun felt a little guilty being stared at, but he still said seriously, You like her more than she likes you, right? Jun Linyuan's face darkened. You want her more than she wants you, right? Don't you want to marry her? The crown prince didn't know what to say. For the first time in his life, someone dared to speak to him like this, and he couldn't refute it. Feng Sun said frankly, Since you like her more and want her more, go after her. It's useless to glare at me. Go and pester her, telling her that you like her and want to marry her. Jun Linyuan's face was tense and expressionless. He gave Feng Sun a cold look and left. Hey, wait. Jun Linyuan left in the middle of the conversation. Master Chu had been hiding behind a pillar. He rolled his eyes at Feng Sun. Do you want to die before taking a bite of your spring roll? Feng Sun said. What? Master Chu said. Why did you try to get yourself killed? Scratching his head, Feng Sun shuddered at the thought of what he had just done. He cringed a little. I was really brave just now, wasn't I? Master Chu said. Did you have a death wish? Feng Sun said. Master Chu, can't you say something nice? Ha, I'll be the matchmaker that got them together. Feng Sun was so pleased with himself. As if Jun Linyuan and Feng Wu would get married and have babies right away. Master Chu said with a poker face. Do you really think that the crown prince who's so arrogant and unruly, will court that girl. Feng Sun said, That's possible, right? Look, you don't even believe it yourself. Master Chu smiled bitterly. However, to Master Chu and Feng Sun's surprise, Jun Linyuan disappeared for 3 days. After leaving the Crown Prince's residence, Feng Wu went back to the Feng family. Xiao Wu is back. Duan Chaoga rushed in before Feng Wu could announce herself. Instantly, the entire Feng family heard the news. Feng Wu was back. The Feng family's main branch was shocked, and their expressions were ugly. The third branch of the Feng family was also in a state of panic. Only Fallen Star Yard was happy. Feng Wu entered Fallen Star Yard. The news spread to every corner of the Feng family. There weren't many people left in the Feng family's main branch. Feng Yanfeng, Lady Wang, Feng Sang and Feng Yiran exchanged looks. They had thought that Feng Wu would never return from Nest, but she was back. Why is she still alive? Lady Wang's face was livid. It was the same for the third branch. Feng Wu didn't care about them. She was going to live in Fallen Star Yard. Sister. Feng Xiaoqi was the first to rush out when he saw Feng Wu. He looked out the door and saw that Feng Wu was alone. He frowned. Sister, why are you alone? Chapter 3476. Chapter 3476. Changes in the family. Chapter 3476. Changes in the family. Sister, why are you alone? Xiaoqi kept looking behind Feng Wu. Feng Wu looked at him in confusion. Of course I'm alone. Who else did you expect? Where's my brother-in-law? Xiaoqi looked puzzled. I still have a few cultivation technique questions to ask him. Didn't he come back with you? Feng Wu smacked Xiaoqi on the head. Xiaoqi asked, Sister, why did you hit me? Feng Wu said, I'm not married. How can you have a brother-in-law? Xiaoqi said, I mean the Crown Prince. Feng Wu put her hands on her hips. The Crown Prince and I are just friends. What are you thinking? Xiaoqi muttered softly, Just friends? What kind of a friend sleeps in the same bed with you? Why don't I have such a friend? Feng Wu asked, What are you mumbling about? Xiaoqi didn't dare to offend his sister. He immediately waved his hand. No, I Ranstater. I Ranstatlons. Sister, why are you alone? Xiaoqi kept looking behind Feng Wu. Feng Wu looked at him in confusion. Of course I'm alone. Who else did you expect? Where's my brother-in-law? Xiaoqi looked puzzled. I still have a few cultivation technique questions to ask him. Didn't he come back with you? Feng Wu smacked Xiaoqi on the head. Xiaoqi asked, Sister, why did you hit me? Feng Wu said, I'm not married. How can you have a brother-in-law? Xiaoqi said, I mean the Crown Prince. Feng Wu put her hands on her hips. The Crown Prince and I are just friends. What are you thinking? Xiaoqi muttered softly, Just friends? What kind of a friend sleeps in the same bed with you? Why don't I have such a friend? Feng Wu asked, What are you mumbling about? Xiaoqi didn't dare to offend his sister. He immediately waved his hand. No, I didn't say anything. Feng Wu gave him a suspicious look. Do you really like Jun Linyuan as your brother-in-law? Xiaoqi asked, Sister, do you want to hear the truth? Feng Wu's face darkened. Forget it. I didn't ask anything. After that, Feng Wu walked inside. Feng Xiaoqi followed her and asked persistently, Sister, are you really alone? Did you have a fight with the Crown Prince? He doesn't want you anymore? Feng Wu was frustrated. When did Xiaoqi, who only cared about her, become a fan of his brother-in-law? That wasn't right. Feng Wu's heart ached a little. She turned around and glared at Feng Xiaoqi. Xiaoqi, you don't like me anymore? How could that be? Xiaoqi quickly raised his hands to deny it. Feng Wu said, Xiaoqi, who do you think is more important, me or Jun Linyuan? Was it that serious? Xiaoqi felt uneasy. Could they really have quarreled? Of course you're more important. The Crown Prince? I don't even know him. Xiaoqi said in all seriousness. Feng Wu rubbed Xiaoqi's head. You're still my loveliest brother. After that, Feng Wu left Xiaoqi and went into the inner hall. Granny Zhao, Uncle Qiu and Qiuling were all there, but where's Mother? Feng Wu looked at Granny Zhao in confusion. Granny Zhao looked behind her before she took Feng Wu aside. In a low voice she said, Your mother is cultivating. What? Feng Wu was shocked. All her beautiful mother ever cared about was looking beautiful and delicate. Since when did she know how to cultivate? Was that real? Feng Wu said, "Let me see." She leaned over and poked a hole in the paper window to take a look. She saw her beautiful mother sitting cross-legged on the futon, with a serious look on her face. Her eyes were closed, and she was circulating her spiritual essence as she cultivated. Retreating to a corner, Feng Wu looked at Granny Zhao in surprise. What's going on? Granny Zhao said happily. Miss Wu, didn't you ask someone to deliver a large barrel of all-purpose transformation liquid? Everyone's strength has improved after using it. Even I am in great health. Your mother. When your mother bathed in the all-purpose transformation liquid, I don't know what memories of the past were triggered, but she suddenly knew how to cultivate. Granny Zhao looked at Feng Wu in wonder. It's like some part of a seal was suddenly undone. From time to time, her head will clear up a little. Chapter 3477. Chapter 3477, Flogging. Chapter 3477, Flogging. Although her mother was very beautiful, she only had the intelligence of a 6 or 7-year-old, which was why she looked so innocent and weak. However, Feng Wu noticed that her mother had a stern look on her face while she was cultivating. Madam said that no one is to disturb her for the time being, Granny Zhao added. Feng Wu nodded. It was a taboo to disturb someone who was cultivating, as they might suffer a qi deviation. Luckily, Feng Wu had set up a barrier around Fallen Star Yard, so no one could get in now. Have you all made some progress? Feng Wu glanced at Qiuling, Uncle Qiu, Granny Zhao and Xiaoqi. She couldn't help but smile when she saw how strong they were. Sister, I'm already a level 1 spiritual king. Feng Xiaoqi was elated. Even in the War Academy, very few people can beat me. Feng Wu rubbed Xiaoqi's head. Due to his ultimate spiritual body, Xiaoqi's cultivation speed was twice as fast. He was already a level 1 spiritual king. Feng Wu had been around the same level before she went to Nest. Your progress is so. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Feng Xiaoqi couldn't hide his excitement. That's because of the all-purpose transformation liquid you sent us. We've all made some progress. Plus, with brother-in-law's guidance. Huh? Feng Wu gave him a dirty look. Feng Xiaoqi immediately shut up and said obediently, I know. I won't mention him. While Feng Wu returned home. In the palace. Your Majesty, Princess Bao-Er is out of danger. The head maid, Qiushue, came in and told the Empress Dowager the news. Congratulations, Your Majesty. Your wish has finally been fulfilled. Princess Bao-Er will be able to visit you in the palace soon. Qiushue was all smiles, and her voice was clear and bright, as if she was waiting for the Empress Dowager to praise her. The Empress Dowager had always been kind to the maids. Meanwhile, the Empress Dowager was holding her forehead and sitting in front of the window, looking unwell. She had a headache. A real headache. Hearing that, the Empress Dowager looked up. Her eyes were as cold as snow and as sharp as blades. Qiushue was startled. What was going on? Why did Her Majesty look like she was going to eat her alive? But Princess Bao-Er was clearly out of danger. Granny Lan, who served the Empress Dowager, sighed inwardly. She knew why the Empress Dowager was so angry. She had made a bet that if Feng Wu really could save Bao-Er, she would serve Feng Wu tea. What would the Empress Dowager do now? Is Bao-Er really awake? Is she really alive? The Empress Dowager asked coldly. Why? Yes, Your Majesty, that's what Granny Gong said. Qiushue remembered that Granny Gui had told her to come in and deliver the message. Granny Gui had told her to report the news. Did she know that the Empress Dowager wouldn't like hearing it? Thump! A cup of tea was thrown at Qiushue. She almost screamed when the hot tea splashed on her. But in order not to be punished by the Empress Dowager, she didn't let out a groan despite the sweat rolling down her face. However, the Empress Dowager said coldly, How dare you disrespect me? Take her away and flog her 100 times. Qiushue looked at the Empress Dowager in shock. However, before she could shout, Granny Gui had already come up and covered her mouth with a handkerchief. Immediately after that, A strong nanny came up and took Qiushue away to be punished. Chapter 3478. Chapter 3478. You don't want it. Chapter 3478. You don't want it. Qiushue stared at Granny Gui with hatred. Granny Gui had set her up. Granny Gui knew that the Empress Dowager wouldn't like hearing the news, but she still told Qiushue to deliver it. As a result, Qiushue had enraged the Empress Dowager, which was why she had ended up like this. Qiushue shivered in pain and nursed the hatred in her head. Granny Lan made a note. As expected, the Empress Dowager's reputation was the most important thing to her. At that moment, the Empress Dowager frowned and instructed Granny Gui, "Go get Hua Wushuang." Granny Gui backed away silently. After some thought, the Empress Dowager turned to Granny Lan and said, "Find my Dragon Phoenix bracelets." Granny Lan was a little surprised. The Dragon Phoenix jade bracelets were no small matter. Only the Crown Prince's future consort could receive this honor. According to the rules, the Empress Dowager would only take out the Dragon Phoenix bracelets on the first day the Crown Prince's consort served tea to her. The Empress Dowager hadn't liked Empress Duga back then, so she had never given her the bracelet. Now she was going to. Granny Lan looked at the Empress Dowager in surprise, and the Empress Dowager said in a serious tone, "Get her here." Yes. Granny Lan hurried off. All items were registered, and the Dragon Phoenix bracelets were recorded in the top-ranking registry. That was why Granny Lan was so reluctant to get them. She had always thought that Feng Wu was the best. If there was anyone in the world who was worthy of the Crown Prince, it would be Feng Wu. While she was dawdling, the Empress Dowager sent someone to tell her to hurry up. The person she sent was Rui. Rui was on good terms with Qiushue. Seeing what happened to Qiushue, she was concerned, so she asked Granny Lan cautiously, "Have you found them? Her Majesty is pressing us." "Miss Hua is here too." She was referring to Hua Wushuang. Granny Lan nodded and followed Rui out with an exquisite wooden box. When they came out, they saw the Empress Dowager holding Hua Wushuang's hand and saying with a pained expression, "Do you know how bad Feng Wu is? I don't even know where to begin." Then, the Empress Dowager told her about when Feng Wu accompanied her to the grassland. Granny Lan frowned. Feng Wu had saved the Empress Dowager's life more than once. Without Feng Wu, Her Majesty might have already. In the end, the Empress Dowager turned the truth around and badmouthed Feng Wu. She accused Feng Wu of everything and made up things about her. She made Feng Wu out to be a girl with a bad temper and a bad character. Granny Lan couldn't stand it anymore. Hua Wushuang had been playing along with suitable expressions. Really? Oh God. How could she do that? I really can't imagine it. Oh my God. I wouldn't have believed it if Your Majesty hadn't told me. As if they were performing a carefully choreographed dance, they SME Feng Wu from head to toe. Seeing Granny Lan come over with the box, the Empress Dowager took pair of Dragon Phoenix bracelets and tried to put them on Hua Wushu's wrists. However, the bones of Hua Wu's hands were a little big. The bracelets were rather small. The Empress Dowager couldn't put them on Hua Wushuang right away. Before she could frown, Hua Wushuang said, "Your Majesty, these bras are too precious." The Empress Dowager said coldly, "The bracelets are the symbol of the prince's consort. Do you want them or not?" Chapter 3479. Chapter 3479, Untitled. Chapter 3479, Untitled. Hua Wushuang blushed. The sign of the Crown Prince's consort. How could she not want it? Hua Wushuang wanted it more than anything else. However, she still had to pretend to try and turn it down. Nevertheless, she secretly pushed harder and scraped her skin. And in the end, she still managed to put on the bracelets. Seeing her injured hands, the Empress Dowager frowned. She wasn't very happy about it. But now that Zhuo Qingwan was gone, Hua Wushuang was her only option. "Let's go. I'll show you around the Imperial Garden. From now on, this will be your home." Although Hua Wushuang said that she didn't deserve it, she still followed the Empress Dowager. However, she was curious. Doesn't His Royal Highness live in the palace? How could the crown prince not live in the East Wing? The Empress Dowager said grumpily, "The crown prince is special. He likes freedom and says that he's trapped in the palace, so he built his own residence outside the palace." For other dynasties, this was definitely against the ancestral system. Once the crown prince left the palace, he would become uncontrollable if he got close to the court officials and joined hands with them. It would threaten the emperor's authority. However, Jun Linyuan was different. He had always kept his distance from the throne, while Emperor Wu was practically begging him to take it. Therefore, having a residence outside wasn't a problem. Hua Wuxia was overjoyed. When she married the crown prince in the future, she would live with him outside the palace and wouldn't have to pay her respects to the Empress Dowager and Empress Dugu 2 times a day. However, before Hua Wuxia could finish daydreaming, the Empress Dowager told her, "When you marry him, you'll live in the East Wing so you can visit me often. I have a lot to teach you." Hua Wuxia was instantly displeased. Why? However, she hadn't married the crown prince yet, so she didn't dare disobey the Empress Dowager. She could only blush and said, "Of course, Your Majesty." Her Majesty was pleased with her attitude and asked Hua Wuxia to hold her arm. "Go see the emperor with me." The emperor's study. Emperor Wu finally finished dealing with the Dongseng kingdom. He heaved a sigh of relief as he lay back in his chair. The intelligence report sent from the front line was very brief and didn't mention Feng Wu's achievements. Emperor Wu asked General Feng after listening to Lady Northern Feng's description. Only then did the general give him the details. So it was true. Feng Wu was amazing. Emperor Wu had never seen anyone as bold as her. She was a mere spiritual king, but she had actually overturned half of Sun Castle. If she became a spiritual overlord, would she be able to turn the capital of the Dongseng kingdom upside down? At that thought, Emperor Wu rubbed his hands and paced around the room excitedly. Just then, the Empress Dowager came in with Hua Wuxia. "Mother, why are you here?" Seeing the Empress Dowager, Emperor Wu hurried up to greet her. He said happily, "Did you hear about Bao Er? That girl Xiao Wu is really amazing. She really brought Bao Er back to life. This girl is simply the lucky star of our royal family. I remember that she was also the one who treated you on the way to the grassland." Otherwise, Empress Dowager flushed. That wasn't what she told Hua Wuxia. "Your Majesty." The Empress Dowager reprimanded her son loudly. Startled, Emperor Wu looked at the Empress Dowager in surprise. Why did she raise her voice all of a sudden? Who knows what she's up to? The Empress Dowager said unhappily. Emperor Wu was displeased. "Mother, Xiao Wu has saved you several times. How can you say that?" Chapter 3480. Chapter 3480. The engagement is still on. Chapter 3480. The engagement is still on. Emperor Wu said, "If that girl hears this, she'll feel so wronged. In the language of the common folk, Xiao Wu is your savior." The emperor was on Feng Wu's side. Sensing that something was wrong, the Empress Dowager frowned. "Your Majesty, what are you talking about? We don't use that word in the imperial family." Emperor Wu frowned at the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager was displeased. It was her honor that she had the opportunity to cure me. However, she keeps telling people about it. What does that mean? She wants everyone to think that I'm weak and sick, and that I'm going to die early. Emperor Wu tried to defend Feng Wu. She hasn't spread the word. The Empress Dowager said, "Why do you all sound like I owe her my life? That's so ridiculous." Emperor Wu knew that the Empress Dowager was angry, and the more he talked about Feng Wu, the angrier his mother would get. He could only keep quiet. The Empress Dowager couldn't help but sneer. "I don't like how arrogant she is. So what if she's a supreme-level medicine refiner? Wuxia is also a supreme-level medicine refiner." Emperor Wu said, "Xiao Wu isn't at the supreme level. She's..." Before he could finish, the Empress Dowager changed the subject. "I don't care what rank she's at. I hate people like her. If you're a good son, do as I say, and don't mention her in front of me again." Emperor Wu felt a headache coming on. Why was the Empress Dowager so unreasonable? If Empress Dugu and the concubines had dared to do that, Emperor Wu would have killed them long ago. However, the Empress Dowager was such a pest. Wait! Emperor Wu suddenly realized what was going on. Why is Miss Hua here? Mother, have you taken in a goddaughter again? That reminded the Empress Dowager. She rolled her eyes at Emperor Wu. What does His Majesty think of Wu Shuang? Emperor Wu glanced at her. She's pretty, the Empress Dowager said. Not only is this girl beautiful, she's also a good person. She's also dignified and magnanimous. She's a good candidate for the Crown Prince's consort. Mother, that position is already. The Empress Dowager didn't wait for the Emperor to finish. Instead, she said in an authoritative tone, I've already made up my mind that she's going to be the Crown Prince's consort. No one can change that. Emperor Wu raised his voice. Mother. The Empress Dowager raised her voice as well. Your Majesty. I have the final say, not you. Before Emperor Wu could say anything, the Empress Dowager raised Hua Wushuang's hands. The dragon phoenix bracelets were on her fair wrists. Emperor Wu was infuriated. The Empress Dowager smirked. I'm here to tell you about this, not to ask for your opinion. You have to accept it no matter what. After that, the Empress Dowager took Hua Wushuang's hand. Let's go. Behind her, Emperor Wu said in a cold voice. Mother, what about Feng Wu? You know that the engagement hasn't been cancelled yet. The Empress Dowager paused and said coldly, Then cancel it now. Emperor Wu said, We can't. The Empress Dowager said, Then let her be the concubine. Having said that, the Empress Dowager led Hua Wushuang away, walking as fast as the wind. She didn't look like a senior at all. Only then did Hua Wushuang realize that the engagement hadn't been annulled. Xinang Palace. The Empress Dowager frowned when she saw how distracted Hua Wushuang was. What are you thinking about now? Hua Wushuang smiled bitterly and pretended to take off the bracelets. Chapter 3481. Chapter 3481. Celestial Spirit Bead. Chapter 3481. Celestial Spirit Bead. She said tearfully as she tried to remove the bracelets. So, the engagement was never broken off. Your Majesty, this engagement. The Empress Dowager glared at her. What are you crying for? Don't you understand what I'm saying? If the position of consort is yours, it has to be yours. Do you think I'm talking nonsense? In the Empress Dowager's Xinang Palace, she would smash things when she was angry, to say nothing of reprimanding another person. Hua Wushuang was frightened and didn't dare to speak. The Empress Dowager quickly softened her tone and said to Hua Wushuang, The engagement with Feng Wu isn't official. Who knows what it is? If you ask me, she'll only be a concubine. As for you, when's your grandmother's birthday? Hua Wushuang, in 10 days. The Empress Dowager said, 10 days from now, I'll ask the Emperor to write an imperial edict and let everyone know that you're the real Crown Prince's consort. After some thought she said, Go back and prepare. Yes. Hua Wushuang was about to leave. Suddenly, the Empress Dowager stopped her. Wait. She then asked Granny Lan. What do you think Feng Wu's cultivation level is now? Granny Lan said, She's at least a level 4 spiritual king. The Empress Dowager frowned and asked Hua Wushuang, How strong are you now? What did you say that Feng Wu's level is? Hua Wushuang felt inferior, because she was no match for Feng Wu in terms of cultivation level. I'm a level 1 spiritual king, Hua Wushuang stammered. The Empress Dowager had a terrible headache. Why are you only a level 1 spiritual king? What have you been doing? You're so weak. The Empress Dowager criticized Hua Wushuang without hesitation. Hua Wushuang wanted to cry. So weak. She was the most talented member of her generation in the Hua family. She was one of the best among the younger generation of the 9 major families. How could she be weak? Zhuo Qingwan was only a level 2 spiritual king. You're nowhere near as capable as Feng Wu. The more the Empress Dowager thought about it, the angrier she got. However, she was determined to beat Feng Wu. She turned to Granny Lan and said, Go get the Celestial Spirit Bead. Granny Lan looked at the Empress Dowager in surprise. Because she had been with the Empress Dowager for decades, Granny Lan knew exactly how much good stuff the Empress Dowager had. The Emperor was a loving son, So the Empress Dowager got the pick of all the good stuff first. For example, cultivators would give everything for this celestial spirit bead. It could increase the strength of a person by several levels. Hua Wuxia had heard of the bead before, so she looked at the Empress Dowager in disbelief. Granny Lan tried to stop the Empress Dowager. Your Majesty, this bead probably suits Bao Air. Bao Air was saved by Feng Wu, and the Empress Dowager was blaming Bao Air for her humiliation. It's mine. I'll give it to whoever I want. I'll find better things for Bao Air when I have something good. Why are you nagging me? Go get it. The Empress Dowager reprimanded Granny Lan without hesitation. Granny Lan had no choice but to silently fetch the bead. The Empress Dowager asked Hua Wuxia to open her mouth and swallow the bead. Work hard when you return home. In less than 7 days, your strength will definitely increase. I think highly of you. After Hua Wuxia left, the Empress Dowager got even angrier when she thought about how she had wasted such a good thing in order to help Hua. Chapter 3482. Chapter 3482. Reconciliation. Chapter 3482. Reconciliation. She put all the blame on Feng Wu. According to Lady Northern Feng, Feng Wu was more talented than anyone else in the world. Although the Empress Dowager kept saying that it was all a lie, she knew Feng Wu well enough to believe that it was true. At that thought, the Empress Dowager got even angrier. The Empress Dowager called Granny Gui when she got angry, because she knew that Granny Gui had a lot of tricks up her sleeve, and would share her burden. Meanwhile, Feng Wu had no idea how much the Empress Dowager hated her. She was cultivating at home, and would give her family some helpful instructions from time to time. They improved quickly. The beautiful lady was still in seclusion. Feng Wu was a little worried, but she didn't want to disturb her. She could only set up layers of barriers around the beautiful lady's room, so that no one would interrupt her. Everyone in the Feng clan now knew how powerful Feng Wu was. Ever since Feng Wu came back, they had been hiding in their rooms, and didn't dare to come out and meet her. Feng Wu had specifically asked Granny Zhao if the first and third branches had come to pick on them while she was gone. Granny Zhao told her with certainty that they hadn't. Feng Wu was relieved and didn't worry about them anymore. She hadn't seen Jun Linyuan since she came back from the Crown Prince's residence, nor had he come to Fallen Star Yard. Feng Wu snorted inwardly. He acted like he liked her very much, but he had disappeared just like that. Since you're not coming, I won't miss you anymore. Feng Wu deliberately forgot about Jun Linyuan, but to her surprise, the more she tried to forget, the harder it was to do it. Jun Linyuan's handsome face kept popping up in her mind. Sitting cross-legged on the ground to cultivate, Feng Wu couldn't focus on her cultivation no matter what. Feng Wu rubbed her head in frustration. How was she supposed to cultivate when her mind was in such a mess? She had already dropped to a level 4 spiritual king, and she was so weak. If Zhuo Qinghuan was standing right in front of her, she wouldn't be able to defeat Zhuo Qinghuan. How could she have time to think about anything else? At this moment, there was a knock on the door. Granny Zhao was busy, and Feng Wu had nothing better to do, so she went to open the door herself. She opened the door and saw Feng Sang outside. You. Feng Sang was a little taken aback when she saw Feng Wu. I am just here to give you something. After that, she handed a lunchbox to Feng Wu. Father said that you've worked hard in your cultivation. We made this ourselves. Please try some. Feng Wu looked at Feng Sang in confusion. She had never been on good terms with Feng Sang. To be more precise, Feng Sang had always disliked her. Why did she suddenly change her attitude? Why? Why what? Feng Sang was confused. Feng Wu asked. Why the sudden change of attitude? What are you planning? Feng Sang smiled bitterly. Yes, the whole first branch of the Feng family had been targeting Feng Wu, and wanted nothing more than to strangle her to death. However, it had been proven time and time again that not only couldn't they kill Feng Wu, but they had also been so unlucky each time that Feng Lu had died because of them. Feng Wu was like the daughter of God, and anyone who messed with her would be in trouble. At that thought, Feng Sang smiled bitterly. Because we're tired. Going against you is too tiring both physically and mentally. Feng Wu was a good judge of character. Seeing the look on Feng Sang's face, she knew that Feng Sang wasn't putting on an act. Feng Sang suddenly asked, "How strong are you now?" Chapter 3483. Chapter 3483. His Royal Highness sent us to protect you. Chapter 3483. His Royal Highness sent us to protect you. Feng Wu asked, "Why do you ask?" Feng Sang asked again, "How strong are you now?" She had been trying her best, so she wanted to know if she could catch up to Feng Wu. Feng Wu looked frustrated. "I was a level 6 spiritual king before, but something happened, and I'm only a level 4 spiritual king now. Hey, why are you leaving? I'm not done yet." Feng Sang didn't just leave, she ran. "Screw reconciliation. I'm so envious." Granny Zhao finished hanging the clothes up for drying and wiped her wet hands on her blue apron as she walked out. Was someone here? It sounded like Miss Feng Sang. Feng Wu came in with the basket, closed the door, and handed it to Granny Zhao. It was indeed her. Granny Zhao opened the basket and realized that it contained raw dumplings. She couldn't help but laugh and was going to cook them. Feng Wu asked, "Are you sure we can eat them?" Granny Zhao asked, "Why not?" Feng Wu said, "I don't think she likes me at all. Will she set us up?" Granny Zhao smiled. "Miss Wu, you haven't been at home these days and have no idea what's going on with Lady Wang's family. They're very close to us now and would send us gifts every now and then. Lady Wang doesn't dare to come here, in case she annoys us. However, she often sends people here, and Miss Feng Sang is a frequent visitor." Feng Wu asked, "When did that happen?" Granny Zhao said, "It started when His Royal Highness spent a night in Fallen Star Yard." Feng Wu said, "They're only sucking up to whom they consider rich and powerful." Granny Zhao said, "Aren't they always like that?" Feng Wu didn't know what to say. However, it would be great if Lady Wang stopped making trouble for them. At the thought of her own capability, Feng Wu felt that she was still too weak. She wanted to ask the White Fairy about her third senior brother. But the White Fairy was cultivating, and Feng Wu had no choice but to go to Master Linghu first. Hence she turned to leave. As soon as she walked out of the Feng Manor, she saw two people standing outside. Feng Wu had met them before. Earlier when she treated Bao Er, she had asked Jun Linyuan for 2 spiritual overlords in case of emergencies. Right now they stood guard at the door. "Why are you here? When did you get here?" Feng Wu frowned at them. If these 2 spiritual overlords were released to the outside world, they would at least be high-ranking officials with their own land. But now they were guarding her door. Of the 2 spiritual overlords, one was tall, thin, and the other short. They were quite easy to spot. The lanky one was called Gao Gong, and the short one was called Yuan Pan. They were easy to remember. "His Royal Highness sent us here to protect you," Gao Gong said solemnly. Yuan Pan smiled politely. "His Royal Highness was worried that someone would try to assassinate you. He couldn't come here himself, so he told us not to let anything happen to you." Feng Wu frowned. What could possibly happen to her? It was just that she had been unlucky and was hunted down in Black Cloud Alley. Right now, she had almost recovered from her internal injury. Feng Wu recalled what happened in the general's residence earlier. She had offended the Firmament Palace, and that old woman was very displeased with her. She was indeed in danger. She didn't know how to face Jun Linyuan now, so it was probably a good thing that someone else was protecting her. Chapter 3484. Chapter 3484. Wanted Girl. Chapter 3484. Wanted Girl. Master Yuan went on. "His Royal Highness says that if you go out, we have to stay by your side and protect you." After all, they were both spiritual overlords and elders in Imperial College. Feng Wu was a spiritual king, so they talked to her as if she was only a normal girl. They weren't her minions. They were only here to protect her for the time being. Both of them thought that way, so they stood ramrod straight. Feng Wu knew that they were Jun Linyuan's people, not her own. Moreover, they were so much more capable than her, so she understood why they didn't think much of the job. Although she could understand it, she still had a plan. "Actually, I don't need any personal protection," Feng Wu said earnestly. But the two masters ignored her. They followed Feng Wu wherever she went. Feng Wu sighed inwardly. When her cultivation level rose, she wouldn't need someone to protect her. However, just then Feng Sun arrived. Xiao Wu, where are you going? Feng Wu looked at him in bewilderment. To see Master Linghu. The two spiritual overlords were shocked. They had heard of Master Linghu before, but he wasn't someone they could meet just because they wanted to. Feng Sun took Feng Wu's hand and shook his head solemnly. You're not going anywhere now. Feng Wu asked why. Look. Feng Sun handed her a piece of black paper. Before she could unfold it, Yuan Pan cried out. A black paper with a red name? A hunting order for the Guillotine Inn. Feng Sun nodded solemnly. The Guillotine Inn? Feng Wu remembered that she had hired an assassin there a long time ago. When she unfolded the paper, she saw her name written in red ink. And there was a red cross on the name. Feng Wu had a bad feeling. She looked at Feng Sun. Feng Sun paled. Looking into Feng Wu's eyes, she took a deep breath and tried her best to calm down. Master Wang is right. It's a bounty from the Guillotine Inn. Someone has put a price on your head. Seeing how nervous Feng Sun was, Feng Wu couldn't help but smile. So be it. It's not like I haven't been hunted down before. The Zhou family has tried to kill me so many times, but I'm still alive. Feng Sun looked even more anxious when he saw how relaxed Feng Wu was. How can you still be smiling at a time like this? Look, it's black paper with a red name. Feng Sun wanted to shake Feng Wu's head. Do you know what that means? Feng Wu shook her head. What does it mean? Feng Sun said. It means that your reward is the highest. Do you know what that means? That is to say, even spiritual overlords and spiritual saints will come after you. You're so dead. Feng Wu was exasperated. They may send spiritual overlords, but there are only a handful of spiritual saints in the empire. How can that be? Just then, someone from Imperial College arrived. Gong Sun Mu, the vice chief of Imperial College, came in person. The 100K on his face was very serious when he saw Feng Wu. Little Feng Wu, what on earth have you done? You're in a lot of trouble. Feng Wu looked at him in bewilderment. Gong Sun Mu said, everyone in the empire who is at the spiritual overlord stage or above have received the news. Feng Wu asked, what? Gong Sun Mu said, someone has put the highest bounty on your head. Anyone who kills you will be rewarded with a peak spiritual overlord stage weapon and cultivation technique, as well as the title of the Sacred Elder of the Firmament Palace. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Chapter 3485, Chapter 3485, Wandering Temple. Chapter 3485, Wandering Temple. Feng Wu was cursing inwardly. Why would they pay such a high price to kill her? They were all peak spiritual overlords. Has the entire empire's spiritual overlords heard about it? Feng Wu frowned. Feng Sun had never looked so serious before. He stared at Feng Wu and nodded. After a pause he added, not just the entire empire. Feng Wu looked back at him. Feng Sun said, to be more precise, all the spiritual overlords on this continent have received the news. Feng Wu asked, does that include the Dongseng Kingdom? Feng Sun said, it's not limited to the Dongseng Kingdom. Feng Wu rubbed her temple in frustration. Although she was much more capable than other people of her age, she was still a mere level 4 spiritual king. The person who wanted to kill her would be at least junior spiritual overlords. How was she supposed to survive? The price on her head was much higher than Zhuo Qingwan's back then, but she wasn't very happy. Xiao Wu, don't worry. There's always a way out. I'm sure you'll be fine. Feng Sun took Feng Wu's hand and said solemnly, I'll always be by your side and protect you. Feng Wu glanced at him. Feng Sun had been making rapid progress. The all-purpose transformation liquid had helped him greatly last time. And after this period of cultivation, he was already a level 9 spiritual king. Compared to before, he was very capable, but now, he wasn't even qualified to accept the assassination mission. Feng Wu wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. She glanced at Feng Sun before looking back at the Feng Manor. Feng Sun took Feng Wu's hand. You're not safe here. You're staying with me in Northern Feng Mansion. Feng Wu said, my family is here. I can't leave. Feng Sun said seriously, you're the one they're after, not your family. Your family will be safer when you're gone. Trust me. Tilting her head, Feng Wu began to think about it. Feng Sun was worried sick. Forget about it. If you keep thinking about it, you'll be running out of time. Those spiritual overlords are like wolves. I'm sure they're all heading for the imperial capital. Feng Sun grew angrier as he spoke. It just so happens that Boss Jun isn't here at the moment. I can't find him no matter what. Feng is still at the Nest Fortress. Everything's happening at the same time. Feng Wu said, I'm going to see Master Linghu. Feng Sun agreed with her. If Master Linghu said something now, no one would dare to go after Feng Wu. It wasn't just the guillotine inn anymore. Feng Sun had no idea how many spiritual overlords there were in the guillotine inn. But he knew that many spiritual overlords didn't belong to the guillotine inn. Anyway, anyone with ambition would try their best. It would be better if a spiritual saint spoke up for Feng Wu. But now, since we're going to find Master Linghu, let's hurry up before someone tries to ambush us. Feng Sun pulled Feng Wu onto a horse and dashed off. The two spiritual overlords exchanged looks, and both saw astonishment in each other's eyes. Feng Wu had become the prey of all spiritual overlords. How terrifying! Would the two of them be able to protect Feng Wu? His Royal Highness thought too highly of them. Let's catch up with them. We owe His Royal Highness our lives anyway. The two spiritual overlords exchanged looks, and quickly followed Feng Wu and Feng Sun. Soon they arrived at Wandering Temple. Chapter 3486 Chapter 3486 Divine Phoenix Blood. Chapter 3486 Divine Phoenix Blood. Soon they arrived at Wandering Temple. Ordinary people weren't allowed to go to the mountain behind the Wandering Temple. Even Feng Sun had to stop at the gate. Feng Wu was the only one who could come and go as she pleased. Master Linghu is in seclusion. Yuanbao looked at Feng Wu in embarrassment. He only went into seclusion 3 days ago. Before Feng Wu could say anything, little Yuanbao went on. He said no one was to disturb him. Feng Wu said, did he say when he would come out? Yuanbao shook his head, and looked at Feng Wu with teary eyes. He said that his heavenly tribulation had arrived. If he can't get through and dies, I'll go find you. I'm sure you'll look after me. Feng Wu was speechless. Was it that serious? Will you take me with you? Little Yuanbao looked eagerly at Feng Wu. Feng Wu looked at the little monk and smiled bitterly. I can take you away from the mountain on any other day, but I can't even protect myself now. Staying with me is very dangerous, and I may lose my life. So, I suggest that you stay here for a while. After I solve these problems, if I'm still alive, I'll pick you up. Little Yuanbao gave Feng Wu a concerned look. Feng Wu said, don't worry. I'll live. Only then did little Yuanbao nod. Please come and fetch me. I'll be waiting for you here. Feng Wu left the mountain, and Feng Sun ran up to her. How did it go? What did Master Linghu say? Feng Wu gave him a bitter smile. Feng Sun asked, isn't Master Linghu going to help you? Feng Wu said, Master Linghu is in seclusion. Feng Wu didn't tell him that Master Linghu's heavenly tribulation was coming, because if the Dongsheng Kingdom knew about it, it would be another disaster for the Zhenwu Empire. When will he come out then? Feng Sun asked anxiously. Feng Wu shook her head with a wry smile. We can't count on him now. He has his own problems. Feng Sun didn't know what to say. But what should Feng Wu do now? The entire continent's spiritual overlords had received the notice, and the news seemed to have grown wings. The Hua family. The Hua family had been living in Flower Valley for a long time. Since they had decided to come back into society, they naturally paid attention to the outside world. When Mrs. Hua got back, she had already told her family about the Empress Dowager. Meanwhile, Mrs. Hua and her daughter-in-law, Lady Hua, were talking in the inner hall. Lady Hua said, Mother, the Empress Dowager likes Wu Shuang, but after all, Feng Wu is engaged to His Royal Highness. Is the Empress Dowager playing tricks on the Hua family? Mrs. Hua shook her head. Of course not. I'm the Empress Dowager's best friend when we were young. Moreover, the Hua family is very influential. Why would she offend us? She really wants to make Wu Shuang the crown prince's wife this time. Lady Hua said. But why? Isn't Feng Wu a better choice? I heard that she's very smart and has the divine phoenix blood. I don't think Wu Shuang is comparable to Feng Wu. Mrs. Hua glanced at her. The divine phoenix blood? What good is it now? It'll only have divine power when she becomes a spiritual overlord. With each breakthrough after that, she'll become much more capable, and she'll be able to fight against opponents that are 1, 2, or even 3 levels higher. As for her now, heh. Chapter 3487. Chapter 3487. Happy and worried. Chapter 3487. Happy and worried. Lady Hua seemed to have picked up on the hint and asked curiously, Mother, do you have a plan? Mrs. Hua smiled calmly. I'm a member of the Hua family, and I'm the best strategist. Why do you think Her Majesty chose Wu Shuang? Lady Hua had always known that her mother-in-law was very smart, and she immediately saw the light. Her mother-in-law must have said something to the Empress Dowager, which was why her daughter was chosen. Lady Hua was both happy and concerned. She was happy to have such a good son-in-law, and worried that something might go wrong. I'll take care of it. Why are you so worried? Mrs. Hua was very confident. All you need to do is prepare the birthday banquet a few days later. The Empress Dowager will be here that day. With Mrs. Hua around, there was nothing Lady Hua could worry about. Just then, hasty footsteps came from outside. Grandma, Grandma. It was none other than Hua Wushuang. Hua Wushuang had always been elegant and aloof in front of other people, but now, she couldn't hide her joy. She was so happy that she looked like she was flying. Mother, you're here as well. Hua Wushuang greeted her mother and ran into Mrs. Hua's arms in excitement. Grandma, you're amazing. You said that you could get the celestial spirit bead from the Empress Dowager. And you did. You said that I could make a quick breakthrough. And I really did. Hearing that, Mrs. Hua immediately pulled Hua Wushuang away and sized her up. You're a level 4 spiritual king now? Mrs. Hua couldn't hide her excitement. That's right. Hua Wushuang said excitedly. I was only a level I spiritual king before, but after taking the celestial spirit bead, I'm a level 4 spiritual king now. Grandma, Feng Wu is only a level 4 spiritual king, and she has the divine phoenix blood. Hua Wushuang was even more unconvinced. Wasn't Feng Wu supposed to have the divine phoenix blood? Wasn't she supposed to be talented? Hua Wushuang decided that since they were at the same level, Feng Wu wasn't all that amazing after all. Good. Mrs. Hua was over the moon when she heard that Hua Wushuang had made 3 breakthroughs in a row, and she couldn't stop smiling. That's great. You've made 3 breakthroughs in a row, but that's not the end of it. There will be an after effect from now on, and you'll be able to make another breakthrough in the near future. Hua Wushuang was even more excited. Grandma, you're so clever. No one can escape from you. Even Her Majesty the Empress Dowager is fooled. Mrs. Hua gave Hua Wushuang a feigned angry look. Hua Wushuang came back to herself and looked around. She was relieved to see that she, her mother, and her grandmother were alone. All right. I'll keep it to myself from now on. She smiled sweetly. You naughty thing. Mrs. Hua was satisfied with Hua Wushuang's progress. She nodded and said indifferently, Feng Wu is only a junior level 4 spiritual king, and you're already a peak level 4 spiritual king. Of course, she won't be your match. Hua Wushuang jumped to her feet and ran off in excitement. However, she was only able to take a few steps before Mrs. Hua stopped her. Come back. Hua Wushuang turned around and looked at Mrs. Hua in bewilderment. Grandma, I'll go to challenge her. Hua Wushuang wanted to defeat her rival in love. Chapter 3488. Chapter 3488. Protect her. Chapter 3488. Protect her. According to the Hua family's information, Zhuo Qingwan was only a level I or level 2 spirit king a few months ago. Hua Wuxuang was far stronger than Zhuqingwan. If she could defeat Feng Wu now, she would be able to make a name for herself. In that case, once the marriage between her and Jun Linyuan was announced, wouldn't it become what everyone wanted? But Mrs. Hua stopped her. You can't go. Hua Wuxuang looked at Mrs. Hua in shock. Grandma, why? Before Mrs. Hua could speak, Hua Wuxuang blurted out. She doesn't know that my strength has increased greatly now. She'll easily agree to my challenge. I'll definitely defeat her. Grandma, if I can't step on her to get to the top, many people still won't accept my status. I don't want such comments, Grandma. Hua Wuxuang pleaded with her eyes. Seeing that her daughter was so insistent, Lady Hua also spoke up for her. Mrs. Hua frowned. You might not be able to defeat her now. What? Hua Wuxuang was even angrier. Then I must give it a try. Hua Wuxuang clenched his fists. Mrs. Hua was speechless. Seeing that she was so determined, Mrs. Hua couldn't stop her. After all, this was Hua Wuxuang's own choice. If she couldn't resolve Feng Wu's problem, Hua Wuxuang's cultivation would be hindered in the future. It's fine if you want to give it a try. Mrs. Hua waved her hand, and the person who had been standing silently behind her walked out. It was her dowry nanny Aunt Shi. Protect her well, old Madame Hua told Aunt Shi. Aunt Shi had always been by Mrs. Hua's side and knew what she meant. Hua Wuxuang might have been one of the daughters of the Hua family's third generation. But who would have known that she would become the future crown prince consort? It would be of great help to the Hua family in the future. Therefore, Hua Wuxuang was now the most important person in the Hua family. Aunt Shi nodded and accompanied Hua Wuxuang out. Lady Hua paced around worriedly. Mrs. Hua glanced at her daughter-in-law angrily. If I don't let her go, you'll plead for her. If I let her go, you'll be worried. Lady Hua asked, Mother, aren't you worried? Mrs. Hua said, What are you worried about? Feng Wu is the one who needs to worry about herself. Lady Hua said, But I heard that she's outstanding. Mrs. Hua looked ferocious. Outstanding? How can she not be outstanding? How can she not be outstanding when she's being hunted down by spiritual overlords in the entire continent? Lady Hua looked at Mrs. Hua in shock. Mother, is that true? Mrs. Hua said, How is it not true? I'm also a spiritual overlord. Lady Hua said, You said that Feng Wu was. Mrs. Hua said mockingly, She even dares to offend experts above the spirit. Saint stage. Does she think she's God Mu's daughter? What a joke. Lady Hua wanted to ask more questions, but Mrs. Hua wouldn't tell her. After Lady Hua left, Mrs. Hua said calmly to the person beside her, Send this letter to the Zhou family. Disappointed, Feng Wu left Wuting Temple and prepared to go home. However, the journey wasn't peaceful, because she encountered an assassination on the way. The two spirit overlords protecting her had stayed hidden, and no one knew so. Just as they were passing by a bridge. Chapter 3489, Chapter 3489. Impression of Jun Linyuan. Chapter 3489. Impression of Jun Linyuan. It was in this downtown area. A figure burst out from the crowd and charged at Feng Wu with his sword pointed at her throat. A level 3 spiritual overlord. It wasn't her judgment, but the two hidden spiritual overlords. Feng Wu, die! Someone screamed. She was only a level 4 spirit king, and she was nowhere near as powerful as the assassin. She could clearly feel that when the other party attacked, she seemed to be restrained by his sword energy and couldn't move at all. He didn't even have the strength to lift a finger. She could clearly feel the difference in their strength. This difference was too huge for her to do anything. There was no need to fight. She would be killed by a single strike. It was obvious that the other party thought the same. Hence, when he saw that she was frozen in place, the man dressed in black stabbed at her heart with his long sword. But, when the tip of his sword was only 3 inches away from her, he froze. This was because a dagger flew over from somewhere and was aimed at the man's head. The level 3 spiritual overlord was instantly killed. The flying dagger hit his forehead and fell to the ground, making a heavy sound. Miss Feng Wu, are you all right? The round and chubby Master Yuan Pan turned around and smiled at her. Initially, he thought that he would see a young girl who had panicked because of the assassination. Unexpectedly, her eyes were as clear as spring water. Feng Wu frowned and stared at the man in black. This person didn't hesitate to kill her. He really thought no one would protect her. Cut his head off and take it back. Find out whose family he belongs to. Jun Linyuan will let them know what's going to happen if they go after Feng Wu. Infuriated, Feng Sun decided to use the assassin as an example. If he couldn't do it himself, he would have to ask for Jun Linyuan's help. If someone wanted to kill Feng Wu, they'd better hide their faces. Otherwise, the crown prince would destroy them. Although he didn't say the exact words, he meant it. The two spiritual overlords looked at him in disbelief. Why was the crown prince so interested in this girl? If he was really so concerned, wouldn't he keep his side to protect her? They couldn't withstand the combined forces of many spirit overlords. That was what they thought, but they didn't say it out loud. Spiritual overlords had their temper. They were proud and noble and valued their dignity above anything else. They didn't believe what Feng Sun said, but they still did as he said. Yuan Pan was all smiles, but his movements were unbelievably clean. In an instant he cut off the head of the man in black. He grabbed the man's long hair and walked back, blood dripping all the way. Everything happened in broad daylight, so the people on the street all saw them. Feng Sun looked back at them and said in a serious tone, "When Boss Jun comes back, he'll reward you." Lord Yuan Pan and Lord Gao Gong only smiled and didn't say anything. It was obvious that they didn't believe him. He didn't say anything else. The two of them had been cultivating in the dark and hadn't been by Boss Jun's side, so they naturally didn't know about the relationship between Boss Jun and Feng Wu. They only remembered Jun Linyuan from a year ago, when he was the cold and murderous Boss Jun, thought Feng Sun. Chapter 3490 Chapter 3490. You can move out now. Chapter 3490. You can move out now. Feng Sun ran up to Feng Wu and comforted her. Don't worry, no one will dare to assassinate you next. Feng Sun had deliberately made a big deal out of it in the downtown area to intimidate future enemies. Feng Wu smiled bitterly. She did not know why she was so unlucky. She had finally surpassed Zhuo Qinghuan and gotten her revenge for what happened 5 years ago. In the end, she had provoked the matriarch of Firmament Palace. Do you regret it? Feng Sun asked suddenly. Feng Wu knew what he was asking. Regret? Feng Wu shook her head and looked determined. Of course not. I just hate myself for taking revenge too late. Feng Sun smiled bitterly. You could have waited until you're stronger. Feng Wu said. I did what I wanted. At that time, I heard a voice in my head telling me that it was time to destroy Zhuo Qinghuan. If I delayed, something might happen, so I did it. Feng Sun smiled bitterly. Feng Wu said, You know what? I did the right thing. Feng Sun asked, What? As she galloped, Feng Wu told Feng Sun, Do you know why that matriarch wanted me dead? It's not because of her pride. Feng Sun said, It's not. Feng Wu said, I thought I'd humiliated her, which was why she wanted to take revenge. But I suddenly realized something. Feng Wu turned around and stared at Feng Sun. It's not like that. Feng Sun asked, What is it? Feng Wu said, She's so angry because I ruined her plans. What exactly did I do? It's all because of Zhuo Qinghuan. Feng Sun still didn't follow. Feng Wu said, Firmament Palace has been trying its best to groom Zhuo Qinghuan and gave her everything she wanted. Why should they do that? There's only one reason, and that's because she's useful in a way. I didn't understand it before, but now, I think that Zhuo Qinghuan is probably going to be consumed by that matriarch. Feng Sun said, I almost believed you. Feng Wu smiled bitterly. I hope I'm wrong. Otherwise, that matriarch will really hunt me down. Feng Sun said, The Feng Mansion is too dangerous. Let's go to Northern Feng Mansion now. At least. Feng Wu shook her head. I'm not going anywhere. I'll just stay in the Feng Manor. Don't worry. I'll set up a formation around the manor. The defensive formation will be able to hold off a spiritual overlord for a while. Feng Sun said. You said that you could only stall them for a while. You'd better come back to Northern Feng Mansion with me, or I won't be able to answer to the Crown Prince when he comes back and finds something has happened to you. Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu snorted. It concerns him how? Feng Sun said. You're not going to carry the burden yourself, are you? You're the hunted prey of every cultivator on the continent. Do you know how much you're worth? Feng Wu said, I can survive. Feng Sun was flustered. Why are you still so stubborn at a time like this? I'm so mad at you. Feng Sun couldn't win the argument against Feng Wu, but he couldn't bring himself to scold her. There was nothing he could do. Back at the Feng Manor, Feng Wu ran into Feng Sang. Feng Sang's face fell when she saw Feng Wu, but in the end, she had no choice but to greet Feng Wu. You're back. Feng Wu looked at Feng Sang and said calmly, You can move out now. Feng Sang's expression changed drastically. Are you chasing us out? Feng Wu nodded. Yes. Feng Sang said, No. Feng Wu said, That's my order. Chapter 3491. Chapter 3491. The Crown Prince is marrying someone else 1. Chapter 3491. The Crown Prince is marrying someone else 1. Feng Sang glared at Feng Wu. Do you really want to kick us out? Feng Wu said mercilessly yes. Feng Sang was so angry that she burst into tears. Our family has already changed. We've already discussed it. And we won't be enemies with you anymore. Why are you still doing this? Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Feng Sang said, Aren't you going to give us a chance to turn over a new leaf? Feng Wu didn't answer. It wasn't that she didn't want to, but the situation didn't allow it. No one knew what those powerhouses would do when they were motivated by the bounty. What if they slaughtered the entire Feng family? To those people, this was just a matter of snapping their fingers. You can leave now, Feng Wu said calmly. If you don't have a place to stay, go to Grand Secretary Feng's house next door. I've already bought it. In the end, she still wanted to chase them away. Feng Sang glared at Feng Wu and ran away with teary eyes. Feng Sun looked at Feng Wu in resignation. Why do you have to? Feng Wu said, Come with me. Back at Fallen Star Yard, Feng Wu took out a pen and paper and started writing. Soon she wrote a full page. Feng Sun took the paper and found that it was filled with precious herbs, such as myriad spirit ginseng and immortal ginger grass. Before he could say anything, Feng Wu handed him a token. Feng Sun took it and saw that it was His Majesty's token. Feng Wu spoke quickly. His Majesty promised me that I can take whatever I want as long as they have it in the Imperial Treasury. Grab everything on the list and bring Master Chu with you. He knows a lot. It's urgent. Feng Wu stressed. Feng Sun knew that this was an emergency, so he nodded. All right, I'll be right back. Wait for me. Uplau relb vivu now VV11LL. E11, relbe manu kusk pedlu in the blink of an eye. Feng Wu let out a long breath. Thankfully, she had Emperor Wu's treasury to support her. Otherwise, it would have been extremely difficult for her to gather all the herbs she had written down. She might even have to fight for some of them at an auction. But now, she was the target of everyone. If she wanted to win the medicinal herbs from auctions, it would be difficult. After Feng Sun ran out, Duan Chaoga ran into Fallen Star Yard. Xiao Wu. Xiao Wu. Duan Chaoga couldn't keep a secret. Something must have happened for her to be in such a hurry. Sure enough, she ran up to Feng Wu and grabbed her. She sounded like she was about to cry. Xiao Wu, something bad has happened. She cried and stomped her feet angrily. Feng Wu thought that Duan Chaoga had found out about her high bounty and was about to comfort her. But Duan Chaoga blurted out. The Crown Prince is such a jerk. He's going to marry someone else. What? Feng Wu looked at Duan Chaoga. Duan Chaoga said, I've heard about that before. We went in when you saved Bao Air, didn't we? I asked around. And it turned out that the Empress Dowager wanted the Crown Prince to marry Hua Wushuang. I didn't believe it at the time. The Crown Prince liked you so much. How could he marry someone else? But, everyone is talking about it now. They're all saying that Her Majesty the Empress Dowager will announce it on Mrs. Hua's birthday. I didn't believe it at first. I reprimanded the person who spoke, but when I went to the Hua family's house today, they actually started to make preparations. They were obviously there to receive the Empress Dowager. Chapter 3492. Chapter 3492. The Crown Prince is marrying someone else, too. Chapter 3492. The Crown Prince is marrying someone else, too. Xiao Wu, do you think the Crown Prince is really marrying someone else? Duan Chaoga grabbed Feng Wu anxiously. Xiao Wu? Xiao Wi? Feng Wu was in a daze, and Duan Chaoga had to call her name several times before she came back to her senses. I see, she replied lightly. I see. What kind of answer was that? Before Duan Chaoga could ask, Feng Wu changed the subject. Help me set up the formation before Feng Sun comes back. The formation had only protected Fallen Star Yard before, but Feng Wu had decided to expand it to protect the entire Feng Manor. Fortunately, there was a mineral vein below, providing her with enough spirit stones. She had gained a lot from this trip to the Peace Grassland, so she was able to arm the entire Feng Manor. Duan Chaoga had been helping Feng Wu. Seeing Feng Wu's calm expression as she set up the formation, Chaoga wanted to say something several times, but she kept them to herself. Feng Wu was now a level 9 formation master and inscription master. She was much stronger than before. Hence, she set it up very quickly. Nearby, the white fairy was standing on the wall. Her eyes widened when she saw what Feng Wu had done. Did you set this up? She looked at Feng Wu in surprise. Feng Wu looked up at her. Aren't you in seclusion? The white fairy said. I sensed danger, so I came out early. Seeing Feng Wu raise her eyebrows, the white fairy frowned. What's going? Feng Wu cleared her throat. Duan Chaoga looked at Feng Wu in confusion. Who was she talking to? She only saw an extremely faint shadow. Was it a human or a ghost? At this moment, the white fairy looked into the distance and frowned even more. There are many more spiritual overlords in the imperial capital. 5, 10, 15. I can already sense 15 more spiritual overlords. Is there a treasure in the imperial capital? But I can't sense any. At the end of her speech, the white fairy looked at Feng Wu in confusion. Why are you coughing like that? Huh? Are these people here because of you? To be honest, the white fairy really didn't think it was Feng Wu. She had only said it in passing. However, to her surprise, Feng Wu admitted it. Yes. The white fairy stared at Feng Wu with a grim face. They know who you are? Feng Wu said. No. The white fairy asked. Then why are they here for you? As she worked, Feng Wu told the white fairy what had happened in Nest. The ancient existence of Firmament Palace? The white fairy seemed to be immersed in an ancient memory. She frowned. She's still alive? Feng Wu's heart skipped a beat and she asked in a hurry. Do you know her? The white fairy said. Not really. We've only met a few times. Feng Wu was overjoyed. It was so much better to have someone who knew about that person, because she knew nothing about her. Feng Wu said. Is she the most powerful being in the world? She hasn't fully awakened yet, but a giant phantom hand came down. It was as strong as Jun Linyuan, who's at the Spirit Saint stage. He's almost as strong as Shuezhibei. The white fairy said. I don't know what level Shuezhibei is at. Feng Wu said. Anyway, Jun Linyuan is a lot stronger than when he captured you. The white fairy's face darkened. Chapter 3493. Chapter 3493. The Crown Prince is marrying someone else 3. Chapter 3493. The Crown Prince is marrying someone else 3. Wasn't it Jun Linyuan who had forced her to protect Feng Wu? At that thought, the white fairy glared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu stuck out her tongue at her playfully. The white fairy gave Feng Wu a strange look. Aren't you worried? Feng Wu looked at her in confusion. Why should I be? The white fairy said. A dozen spiritual overlords want to kill you. Aren't you afraid? Feng Wu only smiled. The white fairy said. That's right. The Crown Prince is here to protect you. What are you afraid of? Feng Wu still didn't say anything. However, the white fairy smirked. But why did I hear that the crown prince was marrying someone else? Feng Wu was still busy with her work, and didn't even look at the white fairy. The white fairy frowned. Aren't you going to respond at all? Her man would be snatched away. What was she waiting for? She should be going after that man. However, Feng Wu didn't even have much reaction. The white fairy asked, "What are you thinking? Do you really not like him?" Feng Wu kept quiet. The white fairy said, "If you behave this way, someone might really steal the crown prince. You have to believe me. Back then Chu Yunfei and I," Feng Wu said, "you were courting him back then, but he wasn't into you." The white fairy was infuriated. She glared at Feng Wu. "Do you have a death wish?" Only then did Feng Wu realize what she had said. She waved her hand. "I'm sorry. She was in a bad mood." Who said that Feng Wu didn't care at all? She was just pretending not to care. However, she was also annoyed by how much she cared, so she had been suppressing her anger. But the white fairy made her show it. The white fairy smirked. "You can't afford to get annoyed right now. Let's save your life first." With that, she turned around and left angrily. Duan Chaoga gave Feng Wu a strange look. She could see a black shadow and hear the other party's voice, but she couldn't see who was talking. How strange. Watching the white fairy leave, Feng Wu patted herself on the head. She couldn't be anxious. There must be a way. Feng Wu was multitasking. As she set up the formation, she thought of a plan. Putting Jun Linyuan aside, the most important thing now was to save her own life. There were only over a dozen assassins at the moment. But what about in a few days? What about the other countries? Feng Wu racked her brain. Soon she had a preliminary plan, but it was missing a trigger. Which family should she pick? Meanwhile, the other families in the imperial capital started moving as well. Even if their old manors weren't in the imperial capital, the 9 major families still had a lot of properties there, and most of the major members were there as well. That was the case with the Zhuo family. The Zhuo family didn't know about what happened to Zhuo Qingwan yet, but they knew that Feng Wu was wanted by the entire continent. Ha ha ha. Master Zhuo laughed until he was in tears. That was great. That was the best news. Feng Wu was wanted by the entire continent, and one would get a generous reward when one had her head. The reward would be weapons and martial techniques needed by a peak, spiritual overlord, and the position of a sacred elder of the Firmament Palace. How attractive! Take the position of the sacred elder of the Firmament Palace as an example. Chapter 3494. Chapter 3494. The Crown Prince is marrying someone else for? Chapter 3494. The Crown Prince is marrying someone else for? It was only an honorary position, and one didn't need to stay in the Firmament Palace. However, one could get paid every year. In layman's terms, it was a dividend. That alone was enough to tempt anyone, not to mention the other 2 rewards. Zhuo Ming said excitedly, "With that reward, I'll be able to rise to the spiritual overlord stage. The Zhuo family must get it." Mrs. Zhuo was equally excited. Clenching her fists, she said, "Feng Wu has done so many evil things, and she's finally going to get what she deserves. After all the people she has offended, she has finally offended the Firmament Palace, and one doesn't mess with the Firmament Palace." An idea struck Mrs. Zhuo all of a sudden. Firmament Palace. Firmament Palace. My dear husband, do you think Qingwan is behind all this? Otherwise, why is Feng Wu on the wanted list? Zhuo Ming said, "Of course. Qingwan is too smart for Feng Wu to handle." Mrs. Zhuo couldn't hide her excitement. But something else then occurred to her. "My lord, why do I hear that Her Majesty wants to make the daughter of the Hua family the Crown Prince's wife? Isn't that position reserved for Qingwan?" Mrs. Zhuo frowned. "How can Her Majesty do that?" Zhuo Ming only smiled. "I've talked to my father about it. According to him, it may not be a bad thing." Mrs. Zhuo asked, "Did father say that?" Zhuo Ming said, "Yes." Mrs. Zhuo was relieved, but she still didn't like it, so she frowned and asked, "Why? Why isn't it a bad thing?" "It's the worst thing. Ming shook his head. My lady, you're so silly. Have you forgotten that Feng Wu is His Royal Highness's favorite? Mrs. Zhuo wouldn't have it. His Royal Highness is only interested in her beauty. Ming nodded. Even if that's the case, he still likes her. Mrs. Zhuo didn't want to talk to him anymore. Ming went on. If you watch carefully, you'll see how calm His Royal Highness is when he looks at Qingwan. There's no emotion in his eyes, but the way he looks at Feng Wu, I don't know what to say. Mrs. Zhuo said angrily. I don't like the sound of that. Ming said. Do you think I want to tell you that? If you hadn't been dreaming all the time, I wouldn't have tried to wake you up either. To be honest, as a man, I'm almost certain that His Royal Highness doesn't have any feelings for Qingwan. Mrs. Zhuo punched Ming in frustration. Ming smirked. Even if we're divorced today, I still have to say it. But don't worry, our daughter will marry the crown prince one day. Seeing that Mrs. Zhuo was staring at him in bewilderment, Ming smiled. But it seems that the one Yue family has to go first. Let the Hua family and the crown prince fight it out now. Hua Wushuang and Feng Wu will fight it out, and Her Majesty and His Majesty will be angry. Ming went on smirking. In the end, they'll realize that Qingwan, who's such a peaceful girl, is the only one good enough to be the crown prince's wife. Ming's words were so powerful that Mrs. Zhuo almost believed him. Just then she suddenly asked, what do you think Feng Wu did to make the Firmament Palace put such a high price on her head? Ming said, how am I supposed to know? Mrs. Zhuo said, I don't care. I'm going to tell everyone. Some clans don't have spiritual overlords, and they don't know it yet. I need to visit them. Chapter 3495. Chapter 3495. Is Feng Wu going to die? 1. Chapter 3495. Is Feng Wu going to die? 1. Ming wasn't a spiritual overlord yet. But the Zhuo family had more than one spiritual overlord. So they had heard about it a long time ago. After Mrs. Zhuo left, Ming sipped his tea and smirked. Feng Wu, huh? When he talked to the older generation about it earlier, they gave him permission to gather a group of capable cultivators from the old manor in Jingyang province. They were all peak spiritual kings and spiritual overlords. The first group of 5 had arrived, and the second group was still on their way. Feng Wu, you'll never survive this. Ming was sure of it. With so many capable cultivators attacking Feng Wu at the same time, of course, Feng Wu had to die. If he put himself in Feng Wu's shoes, he would be doomed no matter what. Mrs. Zhuo thought the same as Master Zhuo. Mrs. Zhuo hated Feng Wu even more. Many of the Zhuo family's third generation had died at Feng Wu's hands. Among her children, Zhuo Qingyu was killed by Feng Wu, as was Zhuo Qingxian and Zhuo Qinglu. She had 5 children, and Feng Wu had killed 3 of them. Zhuo Qingwan and Zhuo Qingxi were the only ones left. Zhuo Qingxi hadn't been raised by Mrs. Zhuo and had been taken away as soon as he was born. Even Mrs. Zhuo didn't know where he was now. Zhuo Qingwan was their only hope now. At that thought, Mrs. Zhuo hated Feng Wu to the bone and gritted her teeth. Mrs. Zhuo had always been on friendly terms with Mrs. Dugu, so she visited the latter first. We've also heard that Feng Wu is wanted by the Firmament Palace. Mrs. Dugu wasn't the only member of the family. Empress Dugu was from that family, so Mrs. Dugu was second only to Empress Dugu in her status as the first lady of the empire. Hence, many noble ladies flocked to her. For instance, Duke Li's wife and Lord Ye's wife were both here. Neither of them had spiritual overlords in their families, so they didn't know the news. Hearing that, an idea struck Duke Li's wife. Her family was related to the Feng clan by marriage, and her second son was going to marry the eldest daughter of the Feng clan. Therefore, she blanched a little when she heard the news, fearing that her family would be implicated. The tea party was led mainly by Mrs. Zhuo and Mrs. Dugu, who chatted the entire time. Of course, Mrs. Zhuo wouldn't miss such a great opportunity to slander Feng Wu. She said happily, "The old saying is right. Good and evil will always be rewarded. It's only a matter of time before they come." That brat of the Feng family used to do all sorts of evil things. Now she's finally going to get what she deserves. And it's going to be a great retribution. Naturally, everyone here belonged to the same side, so the other ladies didn't like Feng Wu at all. Is Feng Wu going to die? Asked Lady Li. Mrs. Zhua asked, do you have spiritual overlords? Lady Li shook her head. Mrs. Zhua said, those who want to kill Feng Wu are at least spiritual overlords. And she's wanted by the entire continent. That is to say, the Zhengwu Empire isn't the only place where she'll be hunted. Do you think Feng Wu will survive? Lady Li shook her head. Mrs. Zhua said, so Feng Wu has to die. I just feel sorry for her family. Lady Yi said, Lady Xuanji is very pretty. What a pity. Mrs. Zhua pursed her lips. So what if she's pretty? She's just a retard. Chapter 3496. Chapter 3496. Is Feng Wu going to die too? Chapter 3496. Is Feng Wu going to die too? All the ladies covered their mouths and laughed. The word retard meant their envy of Lady Xuanji's looks turned into mockery. It was as if that was the only way they could feel better. By the way, I heard that Feng Wu's brother is also very talented. With the help of Grand Secretary Fang, he has been making rapid progress. I think it won't be long before he rises again and becomes the pillar of the empire. Lady Yi gave Mrs. Zhua a meaningful look. Mrs. Zhua didn't say anything, but she smirked. Lady Yi knew that the Zhua family had something planned. That made sense. Since the Zhua family and Feng Wu were archenemies, of course, they would add insult to injury. An idea struck Lady Yi, and she asked, if these people want to kill Feng Wu, will the Feng clan be affected? Mrs. Zhua smirked. Anyway, I heard that the Feng clan isn't going to get away this time. That was to say. Lady Yi glanced at Lady Li and saw that the latter was pricking up her ears. She then asked, will their extended family be affected? Lady Li nodded and looked solemnly at Mrs. Zhua. Mrs. Zhua smirked. It'll be so chaotic. Who knows if someone will try to take advantage of the situation. Feng Wu only has one head, and all the capable cultivators are already here. They won't leave empty-handed. Why should they? I don't know if they'll be willing to come here for nothing. Lady Li immediately paled. Lady Yi said, actually, I've been wondering, what did Feng Wu do to make the Firmament Palace so angry? Moreover, I don't think Master Yun of the Firmament Palace can give such a reward. Mrs. Zhua glanced at Lady Yi and said in a mysterious tone, Feng Wu offended. Master Yun's boss. Lady Yi was confused. Her boss? Who's that? Mrs. Zhua said, she's not from our era. That's all I can tell you. Lady Yi was anything but ordinary, and her stomach lurched when she heard that. Don't tell me. Oh God, someone from that era is still alive? How dare Feng Wu offend someone like that? If that person really goes berserk, the Zhengwu Empire will be wiped out. Mrs. Zhua gloated. You don't say. I think Feng Wu has really lost her mind. I still have some errands to run at home. I'll be on my way. Lady Li couldn't sit still anymore, and ran back home right away. As soon as Lady Li left, Mrs. Duga threw a dirty look at Mrs. Zhua. You're scaring her on purpose. Her clueless daughter-in-law is going to have a hard time. Having achieved her goal, Mrs. Zhua was elated. I'm not scaring her. I'm only telling her the truth. As for how she reacts, it's her business. I missed the part where that's my problem. Anyway, Qingyuan is the most popular member of the Firmament Palace now. As for Feng Wu, the Zhua family will just have to wait and see. After that, Mrs. Zhua went back home, looking very pleased. Mrs. Dugu and Lady Yi looked at each other, and both had twinkling eyes. If what Mrs. Zhua said was true, the Zhua family would rise even higher. Isn't the Empress Dowager fond of that girl from the Hua family? Isn't Mrs. Zhua worried that Zhua Qingyuan won't be able to marry His Royal Highness? Lady Yi asked curiously. Chapter 3497. Chapter 3497. Is Feng Wu going to die 3? Chapter 3497. Is Feng Wu going to die 3? Mrs. Duga smirked. That's great. She can always marry the second prince. Lady Yi vented her sarcasm inwardly. The crown prince and the second prince were worlds apart. How could they be the same? They couldn't be more different. After Mrs. Zhua sent the news to Mrs. Dugu, Lady Yi, and Lady Li, she was sure that they would spread the news among their friends. Feng Wu, you're not only going to die, but your reputation will be ruined as well. Mrs. Zhua went back home in a great mood. Before she entered the house, she felt something was off. What was wrong? Mrs. Zhua went into the backyard and saw that most of it had been destroyed. Zhua Ming was drinking from a wine cask and was very drunk. Let me go. I'll kill every one of the Feng clan. Zhua Ming rushed out with the saber over his shoulder, but his servants stopped him. What happened? Mrs. Zhua frowned. Seeing that Mrs. Zhua was here, Steward Zhua said. Master was furious when he heard the news. The letter is on the table. Leave us. After sending them out, Mrs. Zhua picked up the letter. It was from the Firmament Palace. Mrs. Zhua was perplexed. A letter from the Firmament Palace, and it was delivered in such a solemn manner. What was going on? Mrs. Zhua opened the letter and read it. One look and her knees buckled, and she almost fell to the ground. It was from Master Yin herself. The letter was about how Feng Wu had destroyed Zhua Qinghuan's true phoenix blood, and no one knew if Zhua Qinghuan was still alive. The Firmament Palace was still trying to save her, which was why the matriarch of the Firmament Palace was so angry that she put a price on Feng Wu's head. Mrs. Zhua's lips trembled. The true phoenix blood. Qinghuan's true phoenix blood. She almost fainted. Zhua Ming rushed over and steadied Mrs. Zhua. Mrs. Zhua said, Qinghuan has always been a blessed girl, and she's very proud of her true phoenix blood. What should she do now? Will she become a cripple? My lord, is this karma? My family destroyed Feng Wu's true phoenix blood back then, and Feng Wu is taking her revenge now. That's right. Master Yin said that Feng Wu destroyed Qinghuan because she had the crown prince and northern Feng general behind her. The Zhua family won't let that happen. We must make her pay. Zhua Ming nodded. Naturally, we won't let her off the hook just like that. Come, let's go to the Feng clan and kill Feng Wu. After that, Zhua Ming took Mrs. Zhua's hand and led her away. Mrs. Zhua, who had been lying on the ground, suddenly calmed down. Wait a minute. Mrs. Zhua looked at Zhua Ming. Master Yin said that Feng Wu is supported by the crown prince and northern Feng general. If we kill her now, we'll offend those two people. Zhua Ming frowned. My lady, what are you waiting for? The more impulsive Zhua Ming was, the calmer Mrs. Zhua became. No, we have to be careful with those things. Just think about it. Even God is on our side now. Have you forgotten? Feng Wu is being hunted down by so many people, and it's not surprising that she's going dead. Why should we make these two formidable enemies publicly? We don't need to do it openly. All we need to do is to get someone to dress up as a man in black. That way, we'll be able to get a reward for killing Feng Wu. That'll be great. Chapter 3498. Chapter 3498. Is Feng Wu going to die for? Chapter 3498. Is Feng Wu going to die for? Isn't that what the Zhua family is going to do all along? Mrs. Zhua looked at Zhua Ming. Zhua Ming said, I'll go talk to my father then. Zhua Ming went to see Zhua Chengfeng. Ever since the battle with Jun Linyuan the other day, when Zhua Chengfeng was severely injured, he had been recuperating and hardly ever showed his face. No one knew what he would do this time. Meanwhile, in the Feng clan, Feng Sun came back from the imperial palace. He left in a hurry and came back much more relaxed. Xiao Wu, I'm back. Feng Sun quickly ran to Feng Wu's side. It was getting late, and Feng Wu was still busy setting up the formation. A level 9 formation master was incredible. More than half of the formation had been set up, and she might be able to finish it after staying up late tonight. Feng Wu was intrigued when she saw Feng Sun. Why isn't Xianyi with you today? Weren't Feng Sun and Xianyi always together? Feng Sun said. He went into seclusion and said that he had to become a spiritual overlord. That way, he would be able to protect you. Feng Wu asked, "What about you?" Feng Sun scratched his head. "I don't feel like making a breakthrough yet, so I'll run errands for you. Plus, I brought you the rest of the spiritual overlords in my family. All the capable cultivators of Northern Feng Mansion that could be sent to Nest had been sent there by General Feng. The 2 remaining ones guarding the Northern Feng Mansion were brought here to protect Feng Wu." Feng Wu glanced at Feng Sun. Although she didn't say anything to thank him, she would never forget what he had done for her. "By the way, I almost forgot about why I'm here," Feng Sun said to Feng Wu in excitement. "I've got all the ingredients you need. Master Chu has picked them himself." To make sure that nothing went wrong, Feng Wu opened the sacks Feng Sun had carried over and examined each item. "They're all good stuff. We're counting on them," Feng Sun said. "By the way, I ran into His Majesty on my way there." Feng Wu asked, "His Majesty? What did he say?" Feng Wu put away all the ingredients and asked casually, as she went on setting up the formation. One could only see other people's characters and attitudes when one was in danger. Now that she was at her lowest point, and was being chased by all the capable cultivators in the world, she finally saw who was genuinely kind to her, and who was hypocritical. From the looks of it, Feng Wu realized that she had made a good choice. She had chosen the right people to trust. Feng Sun said, "His Majesty said that he had an agreement with the matriarch of the Firmament Palace, and it wasn't appropriate for him to help you openly. However, he has dismissed 10 capable men from the Imperial Palace, and they're no longer his guards. They can work for you now. By the way," Feng Sun lowered his voice, "they're all spiritual overlords." Feng Wu said, "I see." Feng Sun asked, "Aren't you happy?" Feng Wu said, "I'm happy. His Majesty treats me very well." Feng Sun said, "You don't look very happy." Feng Wu ignored him and asked, "Didn't His Majesty tell you anything else?" Feng Sun scratched his head. "No," Feng Wu said. "If that's the case, I need to go to court now. What's wrong with His Majesty? Why doesn't he have any faith in me? It'll be such a waste if I don't take this great opportunity." Feng Sun stared at Feng Wu in astonishment. "What are you talking about?" Chapter 3499. Chapter 3499. Encounter 1. Chapter 3499. Encounter 1. Had he heard it correctly? Not only wasn't Feng Wu intimidated by what had happened, but she was also trying to set someone up. Feng Wu dusted off her hands and turned to Feng Sun. "Come, let's go to court." Feng Sun was at a loss and looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment. What was the girl doing? Since he couldn't figure it out, Feng Sun had to go with Feng Wu. What he didn't expect was that instead of going to see His Majesty, Feng Wu went to the vault of the Imperial Palace. With Emperor Wu's token, Feng Wu could go anywhere in the Imperial Palace. There were a lot of good stuff in the Imperial Palace, but after walking around, Feng Wu frowned. That shouldn't be the case. Feng Sun had been astonished the whole time. Not only did you just walk in, you even rested your hands on your waist and looked so disgusted. Feng Wu, you're incredible. Feng Sun didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Feng Wu frowned. It shouldn't be the case. Feng Sun asked curiously, "What are you looking for?" Feng Wu said, "It's an ancient pill recipe that can control one's mind, but it's not in the Imperial Palace. Where can it be found?" Feng Sun asked, "Are there such elixirs?" Feng Wu glanced at Feng Sun but didn't say anything. Feng Sun asked, "What's wrong? Why did he feel like he was being looked down upon by his sister?" Feng Wu said, "I think I should go to His Majesty." Master Gao was surprised to see Feng Wu. What happened to Feng Wu hadn't spread among the common folk yet, but some people in the Imperial Palace didn't like her, so with their connivance, the news got around. "Miss Wu, what are you doing here?" Master Gao had always been very nice to Feng Wu. Hence, he went to greet Feng Wu outside the study. "I want to see His Majesty," said Feng Wu earnestly. Seeing the serious look on Feng Wu's face, Master Gao sighed inwardly and gave Feng Wu a sympathetic look. She was such a nice girl. How could anyone? There were things that Master Gao didn't want to say, but he took the initiative to tell her. His Majesty is busy in the study. I'll go report to His Majesty after he's done. How about that? Before Feng Wu could say anything, she heard the sound of someone smashing a cup, as well as an angry voice. Wasn't that the Empress Dowager? As expected, before Feng Wu could dodge, the Empress Dowager came out with a large group of people. Granny Gui spotted Feng Wu right away. The Empress Dowager, who had been walking angrily, didn't see Feng Wu, but Granny Gui reminded her on purpose, so she looked up and saw that Feng Wu was standing at the front gate with Master Gao. Seeing that the Empress Dowager was still angry, Master Gao felt a headache coming. Oh no! He had tried to take Feng Wu to a side hall, so that she could avoid the Empress Dowager, but the Empress Dowager ran into her right away. Master Gao had been by Emperor Wu's side the whole time, and he knew perfectly well that the Empress Dowager didn't like Feng Wu. Recently, her dislike had turned into hatred. As expected, the Empress Dowager's eyes glinted coldly when she saw Feng Wu. It's you. The Empress Dowager stopped in front of Feng Wu. Feng Wu rolled her eyes. What kind of luck was this? Why did she run into the Empress Dowager here? Chapter 3500 Chapter 3500, Encounter 2. Chapter 3500 Encounter 2. However, Feng Wu wouldn't back down when it came to the Empress Dowager. She had tolerated the old lady before, but now that the Empress Dowager had made her attitude so clear, why should Feng Wu try to play nice? Hence, Feng Wu gave the Empress Dowager an indifferent look and didn't say anything. That attitude made the already angry Empress Dowager even angrier. Fine, fine. You have no respect for me anymore, do you? You haven't even married into the family, and you're already like this. What will happen if you do? The Empress Dowager snorted. She raised her voice in anger, so there was no way Emperor Wu couldn't hear her. Emperor Wu felt a headache coming on. Why had his mother become so unreasonable? She had just asked him to cancel the engagement between the Crown Prince and Feng Wu, and give Hua Wushuang to the Crown Prince instead. Emperor Wu was so angry that his head hurt. Did she know how outstanding Feng Wu was? Did she? Hearing the Empress Dowager's words, Emperor Wu hurried out, fearing that the Empress Dowager would drive Feng Wu away. Before Emperor Wu could get close, the Empress Dowager snapped at Feng Wu. Kneel! Feng Wu looked up, her eyes cold and emotionless. The Empress Dowager had gone too far. The Empress Dowager glared at Feng Wu. I told you to kneel. Didn't you hear me? Feng Wu suddenly smiled. Your Majesty, are you making me kneel? Are you asking a semi-divine medicine refiner to kneel before you now? The Empress Dowager's expression froze at Feng Wu's words. Feng Wu wasn't that outstanding in the Zhenwu Empire, in terms of her cultivation level. After all, there were many people above her who were better than her. However, in terms of medical skills, she was almost one of a kind. A semi-divine medicine refiner was an honored guest in any country on the continent, but the Empress Dowager ignored that question on purpose. A semi-divine medicine refiner? When did Miss Feng Wu reach that stage? Do you have any evidence? Seeing that the Empress Dowager was embarrassed, Granny Gui interrupted Feng Wu. Feng Wu smiled. The Empress Dowager knows best whether I'm a semi-divine medicine refiner or not. I saved Bao Er, didn't I, Your Majesty? A supreme-level medicine refiner couldn't save Bao Er, but Feng Wu had saved her, which proved that she was probably a semi-divine medicine refiner. Even if she wasn't, she would be one in the near future. At that thought, the Empress Dowager was probably the only one who knew how conflicted she felt. Rubbing her head, Feng Wu smiled at the Empress Dowager. If I remember correctly, I made a bet with you before I saved Bao Er at the Crown Prince's residence, didn't I? The bet was... The Empress Dowager flushed. She glared at Feng Wu, her eyes spitting fire. Damn her! The Empress Dowager had forgotten about the bet on purpose, and she thought that as the Empress Dowager, she could do whatever she wanted. If she didn't remember the bet, no one would dare to remind her. However, she didn't expect to meet such a tough opponent this time. Feng Wu hadn't been like this before, but now she wouldn't give in. The more the Empress Dowager thought about it, the angrier she got. However, when she looked up, she saw Feng Wu's half-smile. Feng Wu said, I remember the bet back then was that if I saved Bao Air, your Majesty would. Chapter 3501, Chapter 3501, Going to the Hua Family. Chapter 3501, Going to the Hua Family. The Empress Dowager was furious. Everything Feng Wu said was like a needle poking at her. She wasn't behaving like a proper girl at all. However, the Empress Dowager felt guilty, for fear that Feng Wu would spill the beans. After all, the Empress Dowager still cared about her reputation. Hence, she glared at Emperor Wu. You spoiled her. Teach her some discipline. Having said that, the Empress Dowager left in a hurry. She walked so fast that no one could tell how old she was. As soon as Emperor Wu approached, the Empress Dowager scolded him before he could ask anything. He looked at Feng Wu in confusion. Strangely enough, he had thought that the Empress Dowager would pick on Feng Wu this time, but she had left so soon. After all, she was the Empress Dowager. Maybe she had become soft-hearted. That was what Emperor Wu thought, and that was what he said to Feng Wu. After saying that, he tried to persuade her. Actually, the Empress Dowager is a gentle person who either loves and hates a person. She has misunderstood you, which is why she's picking on you. You can coax her later and resolve the misunderstanding. Then everything will be fine. Feng Wu gave Emperor Wu a strange look. Master Gao didn't know what to say. With a wry smile, he told Emperor Wu about the conversation between Feng Wu and the Empress Dowager. Only then did Emperor Wu realize why his mother was in such a hurry and ran away without looking back. Emperor Wu shook his head and didn't say anything. Let's talk inside. Feng Wu followed Emperor Wu into the study. No one knew what they talked about in the study. All Master Gao knew was that Emperor Wu was lost in thought after Feng Wu left. Emperor Wu was deep in thought when he suddenly looked up and asked Master Gao, Do you think Feng Wu can really turn the situation around? Master Gao said, What? Emperor Wu said, Can she really turn a bad thing into a good thing with so many people after her? Master Gao asked, Is that possible? Emperor Wu said, That's right. Is that possible? No matter how Emperor Wu thought about it, he couldn't figure out how Feng Wu could turn the situation around. What about the Crown Prince? Emperor Wu asked. Is he the key? Master Gao looked confused. His Royal Highness hasn't come back since he left the mansion a few days ago. No one knows where he is. Emperor Wu rubbed his chin. That's strange. I asked Feng Wu just now, and she said that what she was going to do had nothing to do with the Crown Prince. She even asked me if I wanted to work with her. Master Gao said, Then your Majesty, did you? Emperor Wu said, Of course I said yes. She's my daughter-in-law. Master Gao thought to himself, I wish you could have been so tough in front of Her Majesty just now. Feng Wu left the palace and went back to the Feng family with Feng Sun. Feng Sun was confused the whole way. From time to time, he would glance at Feng Wu. What had she told His Majesty? What was her plan? Feng Sun couldn't help but ask curiously, What's your plan? Feng Wu said, Don't worry. You'll get busy. Feng Sun said, What? But he still couldn't understand. What did she mean? Was it because he was too dumb? Just then, Feng Wu said to herself, His Majesty said that the ancient recipe is with the Hua family. They must have brought it out of the Flower Valley this time, right? Feng Sun was shocked. You're going to the Hua family? Chapter 3502, Chapter 3502, The Divorce Letter. Chapter 3502, The Divorce Letter. Feng Wu nodded. That's right. I guess I have to go to the Hua family. No way. Feng Sun disagreed. Do you know what kind of relationship you have with the Hua family? You're their daughter's rival in love. Do you think you can walk out of there alive? Feng Wu said. So it's best if Hua Wushuang comes out on her own. Suddenly, Feng Wu turned around and gave Feng Sun a strange look. Feng Sun's heart sank. He felt like he had become her target. What do you want? Feng Wu smiled a little. Why don't you lure Hua Wushuang out? It won't be too much trouble. Just lure her out of the Hua family. Feng Sun said proudly. I'm not going. Feng Wu was about to coax Feng Sun when she looked up and saw that they were almost at the entrance of her house. However, there was a commotion outside. There seems to be a problem. The two of them quickly rode forward on their mounts. The crowd parted to make way for them. Feng Wu saw a carriage up ahead, in which a woman was sobbing, a child was crying, and a mean servant was reprimanding someone. Feng Wu saw Feng Sang and Feng Yiran standing at the door, looking furious. Feng Wu sat on her mount and watched from above. There was also a mount on the other side. Riding on the tall horse was a handsome but malicious-looking man. His eyes were ruthless and cold. Ignoring Feng Wu, he stared at the mother and daughter in the carriage and said in an extremely cold voice. A piece of paper flew out of his hand and landed on the woman. This is your divorce letter. In the future, we'll have nothing to do with each other. The girl is yours, and Hao Hao belongs to the Duke's estate. He has nothing to do with your family. With that, the man was about to leave. Was he divorcing his wife? Feng Wu recognized the woman in the carriage as Feng Yi, the eldest daughter of the Feng family. The girl in her arms was probably her daughter, Niu, but Feng Wu had never seen her before. Li Chaopan. Why? Feng Yi was dumbfounded. She didn't have a good life at her in-laws' house, but she could still live on. However, for some reason this afternoon, her mother-in-law suddenly told her that she had been divorced. Her husband actually wrote a divorce letter and threw it at her face. Feng Yi was the weakest among the sisters. When she was divorced, she would only cry and ask why. She cried, and so did Niu. For a moment, everything was in chaos. Feng Yi rushed forward and wanted to hug Li Chaopan's thigh, but Li Chaopan was extremely ruthless. He swung the horsewhip in his hand and hit the back of Feng Yi's hand. A bloody whip mark immediately appeared on the back of her hand. The 2-meter-tall horse raised its front hooves high and was about to step on Feng Yi. Sister. Feng Sang rushed forward and pulled Feng Yi back. Otherwise, Feng Yi would really have been trampled to death. Feng Sang was still in shock. Sister, what are you doing? Feng Yi was so shocked that she stood there in a daze. Li Chaopan was about to leave with his group of evil servants. Before he could leave, Feng Yiran bellowed, Li Chaopan, stop right there. Li Chaopan did stop. He turned around and gave Feng Yiran a provocative look. What's up? Feng Yiran, with your little strength, what can you possibly do? Chapter 3503. Chapter 3503. Unforeseen Event 1. Chapter 3503. Unforeseen Event 1. Feng Yiran, you're so weak. What can you possibly do? Li Chaopan's words were too harsh. Feng Yiran's face flushed red, and his eyes blazed with fury. What? Do you really want to fight me? You're just a spiritual grandmaster. How dare you? Li Chaopan gave Feng Yiran a sidelong glance. Feng Yiran used to be his brother-in-law, but not anymore. Let's go. Li Chaopan flicked his whip and wanted to leave. Niu and Feng Yi were crying. Feng Sang rushed up angrily, grabbed the tail of Li Chaopan's horse and roared, Get down. Li Chaopan didn't show any mercy and whipped Feng Sang in the face. The long whip landed on Feng Sang's face, leaving a bloody mark. Li Chaopan, is your family going against the Feng family? Feng Yiran was furious. He stood in front of Feng Sang and shouted at Li Chaopan. Li Chaopan said, You're right. Today, we'll become enemies with the Feng clan. Feng Sang asked, Why? Why did Li Chaopan have such a big reaction? Of course, Li Chaopan wouldn't say that it was because of Feng Wu, because if he did, people would say that they were disloyal and that they couldn't share the hardships of their in-laws. Therefore, Duke Li had come up with an excuse. Moreover, that excuse was enough to humiliate the Feng clan. When the powerful cultivators dealt with the Feng clan, they wouldn't associate Duke Li's family with the Feng clan anymore. Li Chaopan looked around and stared at Feng Yiran and Feng Sang. He stressed each word. Are you sure you want me to say it in front of so many people? Fine. If the Feng clan isn't afraid of humiliation, so be it. What? Feng Yiran and Feng Sang blanched. Feng Wu frowned as well. Li Chaopan said, "Haven't I made myself clear? Your sister has made me a cuckold. Do you understand what I'm saying now? Instead of drowning her in a pond, I brought her back to you in one piece. My family has shown you enough mercy." He turned to leave after that. "I didn't. You're slandering me." Feng Yi, who had been hoping that Li Chaopan would take her back, was astonished. "I didn't do that. You're lying." Feng Yi shouted at Li Chaopan. However, Li Chaopan didn't even look at her. He said, "I've delivered her in the letter of marriage annulment. From now on, our families have nothing to do with each other." "I really didn't," Feng Yi cried in despair. However, Li Chaopan didn't even look at her. There was no warmth in his eyes. Feng Sang helped Feng Yi, who was crying so hard that she was about to pass out, to her feet. Feng Yiran stepped out and blocked Li Chaopan's way. "You have to catch an adulteress in bed to convict her. How did my sister make you a cuckold? Where's your witness? Where's your physical evidence? You can't say whatever you want." Li Chaopan smirked. "Your Feng clan is so strange. You don't seem to mind public humiliation at all. Do they have to tell everyone about it? No one will dare to marry a daughter of your clan in the future." Feng Yiran was too furious to speak. "Out of my way!" Li Chaopan's whip sent Feng Yiran flying backward. Li Chaopan was about to leave with his men. He was so bloated with pride, so domineering, and so swollen with arrogance. It was simply too much. Chapter 3504. Chapter 3504. Unforeseen Event 2. Chapter 3504. Unforeseen Event 2. Thump. Feng Wu showed up when Li Chaopan kicked Feng Yiran away and wanted to storm off. Without another word, she struck out. To be more precise, she used her foot. She kicked Li Chaopan in the chest, sending the arrogant second son of Duke Li flying. "Young master!" The people around Li Chaopan rushed out to catch him. However, Feng Wu's kick was so hard that Li Chaopan flew back for dozens of meters before he fell to the ground. Thump! There was a human-shaped pit in the ground. Li Chaopan was stuck in it. A spiderweb-like crack spread out from the center of the pit. The two guards tried to save Li Chaopan, but they couldn't catch him. Li Chaopan was baffled. Blood trickled down the corner of his mouth as he struggled to crawl out of the pit. He wasn't the only one that was shocked. Everyone was dumbfounded. He was the second son of the Li family, and no one dared to. Well, they all fell silent when they saw who had arrived. It was Feng Wu. Feng Wu was said to have the divine phoenix blood, and had made rapid progress in her cultivation. She was the top student of Imperial College, and was suspected to be the Crown Prince's fiancée. "It's you." Feng Wu didn't see Li Chaopan, but Li Chaopan had seen her before. For the past year, Feng Wu had been the center of attention of the younger generation. Moreover, for her birthday, all the fireworks in the city had lit up the sky, which was as resplendent as the stars. Li Chaopan wasn't blind, so of course he could see it. Therefore, Li Chaopan frowned when he saw Feng Wu. Why was Feng Wu so capable now? However, when he recalled what his mother told him, Li Chaopan smirked inwardly. No matter how capable Feng Wu was, she couldn't be more powerful than a spiritual overlord. And so many of them were trying to kill her now. She wouldn't survive. At that thought, Li Chaopan sneered at Feng Wu. With the help of his guards, he struggled to his feet, stared at Feng Wu with his cold eyes, and slowly walked toward her. Meanwhile, Feng Sang was supporting Feng Yiran. Feng Yiran was badly injured. He spat out a few mouthfuls of blood and hung limply on Feng Sang's shoulder. His bones felt like jelly. Feng Wu examined him and saw that 3 of his ribs were broken, and his internal organs were all injured. Before she knew it, Feng Wu was furious. Feng Wu knew better than anyone else. Since Li Chaopan chose today to leave his wife, and had used such a vile excuse to offend the Feng clan, Feng Wu knew that Feng Yi would never have cheated on her husband. Hence, Li Chaopan was telling everyone that Duke Li was no longer friends with the Feng clan. Feng Wu handed Feng Sang a bottle of potion. "Give it to your brother." Feng Sang nodded. She didn't like Feng Wu at all, but when Feng Wu stepped out, she felt so safe. Feng Sang was astonished when she saw the potion. A semi-divine potion. OMG! What did she see? Was it really a semi-divine potion? Feng Wu gave it to her, as if it was a bottle of water. Feng Sang turned around to ask Feng Wu, but Feng Wu and Li Chaopan were facing each other in a staring competition. Duan Chaoga had arrived at some point, and Feng Wu had sent her here to look after Feng Yuran. Seeing Feng Sang standing there, Duan Chaoga uncorked the bottle and poured the potion into Feng Yuran's mouth. Chapter 3505. Chapter 3505. Unforeseen Event 3. Chapter 3505. Unforeseen Event 3. Hey! Feng Sang stared at Chaoga and Duan Chaoga in astonishment. Do you know what potion you just fed him? Although Feng Sang couldn't make potions, she could still recognize what it was. She was sure that it was a semi-divine potion. Chaoga glanced at her and said, "It's a semi-divine potion." That matter-of-fact tone. Feng Sang was so shocked that she didn't know what to say. Meanwhile, Li Chaopan glared at Feng Wu and threatened her. "This is none of your business. Get lost." Feng Wu gave her a half-smile. "After what I did to you, you're still threatening me. I see that you're a barking dog." As the son of Duke Li Chaopan couldn't stand such sarcasm. He wanted to punch Feng Wu in the face. However, he realized something when he saw the half-smile on Feng Wu's face. Feng Wu was so much more capable than he was that he knew he wouldn't be her match. However, Li Chaopan said sarcastically, "I was wondering who it was. So it's you. You still have time to show off. If I were you, I'd be hiding in the mountains now." "Li Chaopan, do you have a death wish?" Before Feng Wu could say anything, Feng Sun quickly walked up to her and stood next to her. Li Chaopan frowned when he saw Feng Sun. He was the young master of the Duke Li family, but Feng Sun was the heir to Northern General Feng. He couldn't defeat Feng Sun in terms of his background or his own capability. Moreover, he had been beaten up by Feng Sun once when he wouldn't listen to Feng Sun, so he was a little intimidated. "Young Lord Feng, here's a piece of advice. You can't protect her even if you want to." Li Chaopan didn't want to confront Feng Sun directly, so he turned to leave. He had tried to leave the Feng clan countless times, but he was stopped every single time. It was the Feng clan's business, and Feng Sun couldn't get involved. Hence, Feng Wu nodded at him, telling him that she would handle it. Feng Sun stood there with his arms crossed. If Feng Wu could solve the problem, he would let her do it on her own. If she couldn't, he would do it. But if he couldn't, there was still the Northern Feng General's family. "All right." Feng Sun rubbed Feng Wu's head. "Go ahead. My family will take full responsibility. Apart from being Feng Wu of the Feng clan, you're also the only daughter of Northern Feng Mansion." He was showing off her power to Li Chaopan. Li Chaopan's face was livid. He threw a dirty look at Feng Sun. Feng Sun gave him a provoking look. Li Chaopan said, Fine, fine. That's why you dared to attack me. Northern Feng Mansion is behind it. However, after what you've done, even Northern Feng Mansion won't be able to protect you. Feng Wu, you're going to die." Feng Wu said coldly. "Is that why the Li family found an excuse to get rid of the daughter of the Feng clan?" Li Chaopan was dumbfounded. So Feng Wu knew about it. How could she not know she was being hunted? Li Chaopan smirked. "Don't make things up. Is the Li family that kind of a family? I'm going to court and accuse you of framing me." Feng Wu said, "The Feng clan will sue you first. Let's go." After that, Feng Wu grabbed Li Chaopan's arm and was ready to leave. "Where are you going?" Li Chaopan wanted to shake Feng Wu off, but Feng Wu was much stronger than him, so he was as helpless as a chicken. Chapter 3506. Chapter 3506. The Unforeseen Event 4. Chapter 3506. The Unforeseen Event 4. "Didn't you say you were going to sue me for framing you? Come, let's go to see His Majesty. I'm going to sue you back." Feng Wu showed no mercy and dragged Li Chaopan away. Li Chaopan panicked a little. Duke Li's family did this thing in a hurry, and they had no evidence whatsoever. Feng Yi had been kicked out because of their bullying. Let go of me. Li Chaopan tried to break free. Li Chaopan cracked his whip as he struggled. Feng Wu took the whip, pinned Li Chaopan's hands behind his back, and tied him up with a black whip. Li Chaopan was furious. Were they really going to see the emperor? If she made it formal? At that thought, Li Chaopan shot warning glances at both sides. Duke Li's family had made this decision together, so Li Chaopan had brought quite a few goons with him. The most capable of them was almost a spiritual overlord. As soon as that man made his move, Feng Sun stopped him, making it impossible for him to get close to Feng Wu. By then, some of the men Li Chaopan had brought with him had already gone back home for help. Li Chaopan still wouldn't stop struggling. Feng Wu smacked him on the head and almost cracked his skull open. He grimaced in pain. Just then, they heard a taunting voice a short distance away. I thought the Feng clan was quite a good family, but as it turned out, their daughter is an adulteress. No family would want to marry the Feng family's daughters anymore. TSK, how dare they try to fawn at His Royal Highness? Shame on them. Li Chaopan looked up, and his eyes lit up. Qingxi helped me. It was Zhuo Qingxi, the only direct descendant of the Zhuo family apart from Zhuo Qingwan. Zhuo Qingxi wasn't raised by Mrs. Zhuo and was always by his master's side. He only came back to the Zhuo family once in a while, so only a handful of people knew him. But Li Chaopan did. He was Zhuo Qingxi's only childhood friend. Zhuo Qingxi nodded and turned to Feng Wu. Let go of him. Li Chaopan turned around and smirked at Feng Wu. Do you know who he is? He's Zhuo Qingxi, the son of the Zhuo family. He's as talented as Zhuo Qingwan. You're doomed. Feng Wu glanced at her. Li Chaopan said, he's a few years older than Zhuo Qingwan, and he's more capable than her now. Feng Wu, you're about the same level as Zhuo Qingwan, and a level 2 spiritual king. You're so dead. A level 2 spiritual king? Feng Wu gave Li Chaopan a strange look. That was such a long way off. She was already a level 6 spiritual king, but because she had saved Bao Er, she had temporarily dropped to a level 4 spiritual king. Given some time, she was confident that she could make it back. Zhuo Qingxi. Feng Wu glanced at him. I've never met him. What a coincidence. As soon as Zhuo Qingxi went back to the Zhuo family, Mrs. Zhuo held him in her arms and cried. She then told him that Feng Wu had destroyed Zhuo Qingwan's true phoenix blood. Yes, they could assassinate Feng Wu, but it wouldn't feel as satisfying. Since Feng Wu had destroyed Zhuo Qingwan's true phoenix blood, Zhuo Qingxi felt that if he couldn't kill Feng Wu in public, there was no point in taking revenge. That was why he was here. He happened to run into Feng Wu and Li Chaopan, so he stepped out without hesitation. You're not just a level 2 spiritual king. Zhuo Qingxi stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu stared back at him. You're not just a level 2 spiritual king either. Heh. Chapter 3507. Chapter 3507. You re a bully. Chapter 3507. You re a bully. You're not just a level 2 spiritual king. Zhuo Qingxi stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu stared back at him. You're not just a level 2 spiritual king either. Zhuo Qingxi stared at Feng Wu. Bring it on. All eyes were on Zhuo Qingxi. The news that Feng Wu had single-handedly defeated the military academy students had already gotten around. Therefore, the crowd knew how capable Feng Wu was. They were astonished when they saw that someone had challenged Feng Wu. I'm Zhuo Qingxi of the Zhuo family, and a level 7 spiritual king, Zhuo Qingxi announced. As soon as he showed his true capability, everyone was excited. A level 7 spiritual king? Really? Was he that powerful? Zhuo Qingxi stared at Feng Wu with unblinking eyes. Do you dare to fight me? I'm a level 9 spiritual king. Do you dare to fight me? Feng Sun walked out from behind Feng Wu and stared at Zhuo Qingxi. Zhuo Qingxi didn't know what to say. Young Lord Feng, why are you doing this to me? What did I do to you? Feng Sun asked arrogantly. Zhuo Qingxi said, Young Lord Feng is 2 levels higher than me. Feng Sun crossed his arms. You're 3 levels higher than Xiao Wu. What do you say about that? Zhuo Qingxi was rendered speechless. If he can't do it, can I? Someone walked out of the crowd. They turned around to find a pretty teenage girl. It was Hua Wushuang. Hua Wushuang didn't come alone. She had brought some maids and grannies with her. One of the grannies had bright eyes and a calm look on her face. She was anything but ordinary. Putting her hands behind her back, Hua Wushuang strolled toward Feng Wu. She stopped in front of Feng Wu with a cold look in her eyes. I'm a level 4 spiritual king. Don't tell me you don't even have the courage to fight me. Hua Wushuang smirked. A level 4 spiritual king. The others were all surprised. What was wrong with this world? Why was every one of the younger generations so talented? Why did it feel like there were so many spiritual kings among the younger generation? Zuoqingxi stared at Feng Wu and smirked. What? Aren't you going to accept a challenge from a level 4 spiritual king? Feng Wu glanced at him and ignored his question. Zuoqingxi had never been ignored like this before, and he felt awful. Feng Wu glanced at Hua Wushuang. Ever since she got back from Nest, she had been running into Hua Wushuang everywhere, trying to get her attention. Feng Wu wanted to ignore her, but she kept popping up. Still, Hua Wushuang's arrival did fit Feng Wu's plan. However, Feng Wu had something else to do. She went up to Feng Yi. Feng Yi was trembling in Feng Sang's arms. Feng Wu reached out and saw that Feng Yi was shaking violently. Are you injured? Feng Wu frowned. Feng Sang was infuriated. She pointed at Li Chaopan and said, They've hit her with a whip. My sister is covered with whip marks. It's so scary. After that, Feng Sang rolled up Feng Yi's sleeve and exposed half of her arm to Feng Wu. The marks were clear and bloody. They've gone too far. Not only did they slander my sister, but they also humiliated her after they divorced her. That's outrageous. Before she knew it, Feng Sang found Feng Wu to be the pillar of the family. She probably didn't realize it herself. Chapter 3508. Chapter 3508. Stop lying to yourself. Chapter 3508. Stop lying to yourself. Feng Sang couldn't wait to tell Feng Wu what had happened. Feng Wu nodded. I see. She then turned to Feng Yi. What do you want? Feng Yi stared at Feng Wu in bewilderment. She wondered if she was hallucinating. Why was everything so different from what she knew? 8 years ago, Feng Wu was a genius. Back then, all eyes were on her, and she was the center of attention. When Feng Yi got married, everyone called Feng Wu a good-for-nothing. Therefore, when Feng Wu's name was mentioned, no one in Feng Yi's family would say a thing about her. In the past year or two, she had occasionally heard the news about Feng Wu in the Duke's mansion, but most of the time, it was accompanied by bad news. Even her mother and sisters had been saying bad things about Feng Wu when they visited her in the Duke's mansion. And now, it was only a moment ago when Feng Sang acted as if Feng Wu was in charge of the Feng clan, and Feng Yi didn't know how to react when Feng Sang complained to Feng Wu. So, do you have any requests? Feng Wu asked earnestly. Feng Yi looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment. Seeing Feng Wu like this, Feng Yi almost felt that Feng Wu could grant all her wishes. However, the Feng clan was clearly being bullied by Duke Li's family, and there was nothing she could do. Feng Wu asked casually, How long do you need to think about it? Feng Yi said, I need hours. All right. Feng Wu nodded. All right, then. So many people had been enjoying the show, but they were suddenly told to wait. Li Chaopan frowned and stared at Feng Wu. What's that supposed to mean? He saw that Feng Wu was setting on the formation as if no one else was around. As she set up the formation, she took out a pen and began to draw something. She looked very serious, as if she was really setting up a formation to trap all of them here. Li Chaopan was speechless. So was Hua Wushuang and Zuoqingxi. Immediately, everyone gave Feng Wu strange looks. They couldn't understand why Feng Wu could ignore so many people. Feng Yi was shocked as well. 2 hours. Just like that. Feng Sang took Feng Yi's hand. Sister, think about it. What do you want? What did she want? Of course, Feng Yi wanted everything to go away, but was that even possible? Feng Yi didn't know what to do from now on. She began to cry. Feng Sang was exasperated. She took Feng Yi's hand and said, Sister, Do you have any idea what's going on here? Xiao Wu has given you 2 extra hours. Do you think it's that easy? Everything you're saying now will affect your future and the reputation of the girls of the Feng clan? Think carefully. Don't tell me that you're still delusional and want to go back to Duke Li's family. Sister, you of all people should know what you have or haven't done. You didn't do anything wrong, but they can slander you and beat you up whenever they want. They can leave your child behind, they can get rid of you, and they can humiliate the Feng clan. Sister, are you still hoping that he'll be in love with you? Wake up. Feng Sang's words were like needles stabbing into Feng Yi's head. Feng Yi was devastated. She wanted to deny it, but a voice in her head told her to stop lying to herself. That was it. Chapter 3509 Chapter 3509 Yu Minji is here. Chapter 3509 Yu Minji is here. Stop lying to yourself. That's the way it is. Li Chaopan is going to abandon you. Duke Li's family is going to humiliate the Feng clan. And they're abusing their power. There's no reasoning behind it. Feng Yi recalled how she had been framed, and how Li Chaopan had dragged her out of bed and tied her up with a strange man. She hated him so much. Daughters of the Feng clan might be confused at first, but they were tough girls deep down. After her initial fear, Feng Yi soon rose to her feet. She went up to Feng Wu and asked, "Can I ask for anything I want?" Feng Wu nodded. "Of course." Feng Yi asked, "Will it get you in trouble?" Feng Wu said, "Tlat depends." Feng Yi said, "I want a divorce." "I don't want to be divorced. I want to divorce him on my own terms." Clenching her fists, Feng Yi stressed each word. "And I didn't have an affair with anyone. Feng Yi pointed at Li Chaopan a short distance away. "I took a nap around noon, and he dragged me out of bed. He then tied me up with a naked man and slandered me." Feng Yi didn't think that Feng Wu could make things right for her. Feng Wu was only a girl, and even younger than her. What could she possibly? Feng Yi made up her mind. As soon as Feng Yi said that, the looks the others gave Li Chaopan changed. Li Chaopan smirked. "That's some backstabbing. Are all girls of the Feng clan like that? They can make such shameless claims. I can't afford to offend someone like that." Feng Wu glanced at Li Chaopan. "Bring me the man who's said to be fornicating with my sister." Li Chaopan was about to turn her down when Feng Wu cut him off. "If you don't send him here to clear the name of the Feng clan, well, I'm sure the daughters of Duke Li's family have their own reputation to protect." Li Chaopan's face darkened. Feng Wu went on, "Even if your family doesn't have a daughter, you still have women in your family. I have all the time in the world to play this game." It was a threat. It was obviously a threat. "Do you think your threat will work?" Li Chaopan smirked. "You're just a petty." "What about me?" Feng Sun stood by Feng Wu's side and supported her. Li Chaopan gritted his teeth. "What if I'm included?" A cold voice rang out. "Are more people coming? Who could it be?" Just then, a handsome teenager showed up in front of Feng Wu and greeted her with a smile. "Hello, it's been a while. Are you bullying someone again?" It was Yu Minji, whom she hadn't seen for a while. Feng Wu said, "I didn't know you were still alive." Had it not been for Yu Minji's sudden appearance, Feng Wu would have forgotten who he was. Yu Minji had been in seclusion ever since they parted. It had been a year or two since they last met. "Bah." Hearing what Feng Wu said, Yu Minji said, "What do you mean by I'm still alive? I've always been fine, okay? You heartless girl. I heard that someone was after you and came all the way here to save you. Is this how you treat me?" Yu Minji's words were a mixture of truth and lies, making it impossible to tell them apart. But one thing was for sure. Feng Sun had goosebumps all over when he saw Yu Minji. He immediately hid Feng Wu behind him and stared at the latter. Chapter 3510 Chapter 3510 Clear my name. Chapter 3510 Clear my name. What are you doing here? Feng Sun stared at Yu Minji with cold eyes. "You." Minji rolled his eyes at him. "Why can't I come when you're here?" Feng Sun said, "I'm her brother." Yu Minji asked, "Biological brother?" Feng Sun said, "None of your business." Yu Minji said, "If not, why are you so pretentious?" Feng Sun said, "You." Feng Wu rubbed her forehead. The two of them would start fighting as soon as they met. "Are you 3-year-olds?" Feng Wu stared at them in resignation. "This isn't the time for bickering. Control yourself, will you?" Humph. The two teenagers moved in unison. Crossing their arms and raising their chins, they turned left and right respectively. The crowd was speechless. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. "Don't you want that so-called adulterer? I've brought him to you." After that, Yu Minji waved his hand. An elder, who had been hiding somewhere, threw a man, who was tied up like a bundle onto the stage. He was quite tall, had a fair, handsome face, and his amorous eyes were teary. One couldn't help but feel sorry for him. Feng Wu didn't like the look of the man at all. The man didn't look straight at all. If he had to have an affair with someone, it should be Li Chaopan, not Feng Yi. Feng Wu looked at Yu Minji. Yu Minji gloated. "I was here a long time ago. I couldn't wait to come to your rescue when I saw you getting attacked. However, the head of the elders said that if I could find this person, with your intelligence, you would be able to clear the name of the Feng clan and restore your reputation. That was why I went to Duke Li's mansion and got him out. Do you know who he is? Gosh, let me tell you something. His identity is quite interesting. He's actually... I'll tell you later." Yu Minji decided to leave someone hanging at that critical moment. Feng Wu rolled her eyes at him. "Is this the so-called adulterer you're talking about?" Feng Wu asked Li Chaopan. Li Chaopan frowned, and his face darkened. Feng Yi recognized him. She stepped forward and said to Feng Wu in excitement, "It's him. Li Chaopan has tied me to him. Everyone in his family knows it. No one can lie about it." Feng Wu smiled at Li Chaopan. "That is to say, he really is the person I'm looking for." Li Chaopan said, "Let him go." Feng Wu asked why. Li Chaopan said, "My family will take care of him. Give him to me." After that, Li Chaopan ordered his men to grab the man. However, Yu Minji's men weren't there to be trifled with. The crown prince of the Dark Court wouldn't let anyone mess with him. "Xiao Wu, do you know where I found him? I don't want to offend your ears." Feng Wu asked, "Where did you find him?" Yu Minji grinned. "From someone's bed, of course. In broad daylight." Feng Wu was confused. "Are you saying that Lady Li?" "Shut up." Li Chaopan's face turned livid before Feng Wu could finish. "Those who slander a duke's wife will die." Li Chaopan gritted his teeth. However, Yu Minji darted a look at him. "Did you think I brought him here because of your mother's misconduct? How can you be so disrespectful? What will your mother think when she knows you've slandered her like this?" Li Chaopan was speechless. Chapter 3511. Chapter 3511, Young Master. Chapter 3511, Young Master. Glaring at Yu Minji, Li Chaopan tried to hit him, but Yu Minji knocked him away with a finger. "You can't offend a spiritual overlord." He smirked. Li Chaopan's arrogance was immediately extinguished by Yu Minji and turned into endless rage. Yu Minji said, "Why are you staring at me like that? Did I say anything about your mother? Is she the only one in the house?" That was. The more he said, the more he fed other people's imagination. Li Chaopan wasn't Yu Minji's match, and his family didn't have any spiritual overlords either. Therefore, he had to turn to Zhuo Qingxi for help. However, Zhuo Qingxi was only a level 7 spiritual king, and couldn't be compared to Yu Minji at all. He would only get beaten up. Therefore, he didn't dare to make any reckless moves. Feng Sun frowned a little. Yu Minji was so annoying. Why did he have to steal the spotlight now? At that thought, Feng Sun shielded Feng Wu from Yu Minji. It just so happened that Yu Minji was slightly more capable than Feng Sun. He walked up to Feng Sun and bumped into him, knocking Feng Sun out of the way. Yu Minji immediately stood next to Feng Wu. Feng Sun wanted to smack them. However, as soon as he started waving his fists, Yu Minji raised his chin in satisfaction. "Bring it on. What are you waiting for?" Feng Sun said, "I'll forgive you for that." Feng Wu felt a headache coming on. "Quiet." Humph. They looked away from each other again. Feng Wu rubbed her temple and decided to ignore these two brats for now, or they would drive her crazy. At that thought, Feng Wu turned to look at the person Yu Minji had brought here. He was a slender teenager with fair skin. The most eye-catching thing about him was his amorous eyes. Before he said anything, his limpid eyes were already mesmerizing. Feng Wu asked indifferently, "What's your name?" The person on the ground ignored Feng Wu. Because to him, the Feng clan was simply too weak. Their daughter was nothing. But this time, he had messed with the wrong person. Before Feng Sun could scold him, Yu Minji marched up to him and kicked him in the chest with the toe of his boots. "We're talking to you. Are you deaf?" His bellow gave everyone the creeps, and the young man trembled in fear. Yu Minji was so terrifying. He really wouldn't think twice before killing someone. He shuddered at the thought of the people killed in Duke Li's manor, and looked at Yu Minji with his limpid amorous eyes. "Lian Sheng, my name is Lian Sheng." What an ugly name. Yu Minji hated it when a man pretended to be pitiful. Hence he kicked Lian Sheng again, sending him flying back until he landed right next to Li Chaopan. Li Chaopan grabbed him and asked anxiously, "Are you all right?" Lian Sheng wrapped his arms around Li Chaopan's waist and cried, "Young master, help me." Li Chaopan nodded solemnly and gently put him on the ground. After putting Lian Sheng down, Li Chaopan realized what he had done when he saw the stunned looks on everyone's faces. He looked up at Feng Wu and saw the smirk on her face. What was going on? He seemed to have done that involuntarily, when he should have kept it a secret. Lian Sheng looked like he had been drugged. He stopped pretending and grabbed Li Chaopan's hand. Chapter 35:12. Chapter 35:12. Don't you want me anymore? Chapter 35:12. Don't you want me anymore? Lian Sheng acted as if he had been drugged. He stopped pretending and grabbed Li Chaopan's hand. Li Chaopan wanted to throw his hand off. After all, everyone was watching. However, Lian Sheng had been standing timidly behind him. He was half a head shorter than Li Chaopan, and looked so fragile that he could be blown away by a gust of wind. He was much weaker than a girl. Li Chaopan threw off his hand. He looked at Li Chaopan with teary eyes. "Young master, don't you want me anymore?" Holy crap! That was too much information. No one here was an idiot. They all saw what was going on. Especially the Feng family. Feng Yi stared at Li Chaopan, and Lian Sheng in disbelief. Suddenly, she covered her mouth with both hands and burst into tears. She stared at Li Chaopan in disbelief, and her pale lips trembled with agitation. "I remember now. Last time in the East Wing, when I pushed the door open, you were rolling around in bed with someone. You hit that person behind your back and scolded me. I didn't know you had a boy toy. Li Chaopan, you have a male lover, but you're slandering me for having an affair with him. You even tied him and me together. Not only that, but you're also divorcing me and slandering the reputation of the Feng clan. Li Chaopan, you deserve to die." A moment ago, Feng Yi still had feelings for Li Chaopan, so she was on his side. But now that Li Chaopan was exposed, she could see how mean he was. She was furious. Li Chaopan wanted to run up to her in anger, but Lian Sheng behaved as if he had taken the truth serum. He had revealed all the truth. "Young master, do you really not want me anymore?" Li Chaopan kicked him in a rage. Lian Sheng fell to the ground and burst into tears. Scrambling to his feet, he ran toward the door saying, "I'll go talk to Duke Li." Li Chaopan wanted to kick him again. However, Yu Minji's men stepped out and stopped Li Chaopan. Yu Minji grinned at him. "Why? He said he was going to ask your dad for help. Why are you so worried?" Li Chaopan wanted to flee, but Yu Minji stopped him. "Where do you think you're going? You broke off your marriage with the daughter of the Feng family, and you're running away now?" Turning around, Yu Minji looked at Feng Wu. "If I were you, I'd go tell the emperor now." Feng Wu nodded. "That's what I was thinking." With a wave of his hand, Yu Minji said, "Take Li Chaopan and this man with you. Let's go to His Majesty now. Hey you, are you from Duke Li's mansion? You should grab your master right now." Someone had already gone to look for Duke Li. Meanwhile, Li Chaopan's face was livid. He didn't want His Majesty to hear about it, because Duke Li's family was indeed in the wrong. Yu Minji was completely unreasonable, so Li Chaopan didn't want to talk to him. Hence he turned to Feng Wu. "May I have a word with you?" Feng Wu said, "Do tell." Li Chaopan whispered something to Feng Wu. Feng Wu looked at him in bewilderment. Li Chaopan bent down and whispered something else. Feng Wu said, "What? You're going to give me 10,000 taels of silver, so that I can stay out of this?" SSSS. Everyone stared at Li Chaopan. Li Chaopan said, "I didn't say that." However, the others weren't blind and could make their own judgments. They all found Feng Wu's words much more credible. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.